Did your best. Well, we can ask.
He's going to come? Really?
Summer.
Packet, no. Packet. Packet.
Yeah, I talked to him today because, like,
This is all.
This is, that's all we get?
That's it.
Oh, okay. That's not anything for us then?
It is for you.
Oh, but not right now. Oh,
I just feel like that took a little bit.
okay.
If not, then
I'm really.
He's like, just
I feel uneasy with just
that's really handouts now. Racist.
I'm like, I don't think I have.
So we don't get to look at, we don't get to look at this policy? Or we get no information?
Okay, it is 5:30. I will ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we would need a motion to approve the May 12th, 2025 monthly workshop agenda as presented.
Could I see we maybe move item number 3 towards the end of the meeting instead of the one of the first items off?
So I did that intentionally. The thinking of us having those conversations as we're about to then go into new business with the district conversations.
Oh.
I just felt like if we conduct all our business and then have a book study conversation about it, that it was a little bit out of sync. Same too with the, putting the policy item discussion before we get to the bids, because it's relevant to what's following it.
Okay.
I would offer the motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay. Any further conversation? Okay. All in favor, show of hands, please. Okay. That's everyone, I think. AJ, were you yes on that one? Okay, yes, thank you. Okay, we are at our first opportunity for citizens or delegations who would like to address the Board of Education. As a reminder, according to Board Policy 0167.3, public participation at board meetings, individuals who are addressing the board are asked to state their name, address, and or your group affiliation, shall direct all comments to the board, not staff or other participants, shall not make personal attacks against a school board member or school district employee by name, shall be limited to 3 minutes duration, and shall not speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. This portion of the meeting shall be limited to 30 minutes, but the time frame will be extended if necessary so that no one's right to address the board will be denied. And we've got our podium over there and a timer. Do we have a microphone? Oh.
Okay. I'm Bonnie Wergo. I live in Maple Ridge Township, Alpena. I am a parent of students from Alpena Public Schools. I'm also a graduate of Alpena Public Schools. I've been listening online to the last few board meetings, and I've felt concern about the divisiveness and focus on some board members on an issue that's been repeatedly identified as a non-issue by multiple students, teachers, and parents. Most concerning to me was the detailed scrutiny of budget items for lawn care and strategic planning related to efficient building utilization, followed by then a motion to proceed with obtaining a third legal opinion on a previously mentioned non-issue, where the cost was an afterthought entirely. After that last meeting, I reviewed the board bylaws and felt that perhaps this would be a beneficial time to review a couple of points from them. Due to the time, I'm quoting only what I feel is most important from board member ethics as a member of the Board of Education, board members will strive to improve public education, and to that end will render all decisions based on the available facts and independent judgment and refuse to surrender that judgment to individuals or special interest groups. Avoid being placed in a position of conflict of interest and refrain from using the board positions or for personal benefit or partisan gain. Remember always that their first and greatest concern must be for the educational welfare of the students attending the public schools. Note that this states the students, not certain groups of students, the students, meaning all of them. And from the discriminatory harassment policy, other prohibited conduct includes that which has the purpose or effect of creating an intimidating, hostile, discriminatory, or offensive environment on the basis of gender, religion, race, color, national origin or ancestry, age, disability, height, weight, marital status, and or any other legally protected characteristic. The harassment of a student, staff member, or third party is strictly forbidden. Any person who is found to have violated this policy will be subject to discipline in accordance with the law. With that, I ask that you all take a moment to self-reflect on these points to ensure that you are following the express bylaws of the Alpena Public Schools Board of Education.
Thank you.
My name is Dennis Schultz. I live at 700 State, and I'm an old citizen. My purpose to visit with you tonight is to simply thank you. I know how tough your job is. I've been on boards like this, and your challenges are multiple. And in addition to thanking you, I'm going to encourage you to focus on your simple purpose, which is primarily to educate children and young adults. Not to be political, not to teach them to be one way or the other. If they can read and write and function in this sophisticated world of mathematics and spaceships, they'll do just fine. And I can tell you I have 7 grandkids that went through this system. They're all doing great. I know that it takes a lot of parental help to get there, and your job doesn't always come easy when many parents aren't as supportive of what you have to do or what they should do. But my purpose is, again, to thank you and tell you that I know that the kind of complication that was just presented to you ends up being common sense in a way, and treating each other respectfully and with appreciation. I know we'll get through all these lumps and bumps. Chairman Mann, I appreciate your time being here, and Superintendent Rabideau and every one of you on the board. Your job isn't easy, but I want you to know it's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, try not to use my teacher voice. My name is Vicki Lindsay. I'm an Alpena resident, retired APS educator, and current substitute teacher, also at APS. I stand before you as a concerned member of this community, deeply troubled by the proposed bathroom policy that seeks to rewrite existing guidelines without clear necessity. This policy, if enacted, would not only undermine the well-being of our students, but also set a dangerous precedent for the future of public education, respecting the voices of students and staff. Our own students and staff have stood before you, expressing their concern for this policy. Their experiences, needs, and voices should be at the forefront of any policy decision. Yet this proposal appears to have been developed without meaningful consultation with those it impacts most. Ignoring their input sends a message that the majority of this board do not believe student and staff voices matter. The slippery slope of policy changes. Implementing this policy could open the door to further changes that do not align with the core values of public education. Policies that prioritize political agendas over educational outcomes risk eroding the trust of our students, staff, and community. What's next on your agenda? Following Oklahoma and changing curriculum to teach that there were discrepancies in the 2020 election? Or maybe Florida is more of what you have in mind with their individual freedom laws that restrict how topics of race can be taught in classrooms. Are you planning to cut out the teaching of the Civil War and World War II next? First bathrooms? Then what? Your slippery slope frightens me. The role of public schools, it seems you need a reminder that public schools are meant to educate all students, regardless of background, identity, or beliefs. Public schools are sanctuaries of learning, growth, and acceptance. Policies that discriminate or marginalize a group contradicts this mission. APS is our public school that provides an education to all students. There are parochial and private schools here in Alpena that may best fit your agenda. A call for thoughtful decision-making. I urge this board to pause and reconsider the implications of this bathroom policy. Engage with the staff and the students to understand their concerns and needs. Work together to develop policies that reflect our values of respect, inclusivity, and the commitment to the well-being of every individual student. That's what's missing. You are too focused on your political agenda. You are forgetting what really matters in all of this, our students.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. I'm Colin Hainstock. I'm currently a sophomore at AHS, and I serve as the Vice President of the Student Council. And I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you today again regarding the proposed changes to our bathroom policy. As Student Council representatives, we've been clear in our position. These proposed changes are beneficial to no one. It's not just deeply concerning, but it's scary that a body tasked with representing and protecting all students would consider implementing a policy that feels openly discriminatory. Targeting an already marginalized group of students, especially for what seems to be merely a political motivation, is disheartening. Our focus should be on issues that truly impact the student experience, such as ensuring access to up-to-date educational materials or addressing the maintenance needs of our school, rather than attempting to alter a policy that's already working effectively. Speaking as a student, it's especially frustrating to watch time and resources being spent on a policy that could expose the district to legal challenges. At a time when we're discussing the possibility of selling property and hiring outside firms to manage district finances, does it make sense to risk a costly lawsuit from organizations like the ACLU? And let me be clear in this. The current AHS bathroom policy is straightforward and functional. Boys use the boys' bathrooms, girls use the girls' bathrooms, and gender nonconforming students have access to multiple single-stall restrooms across campus. Again, we have no complaints from staff, students, or administrators at this time that I am aware of. In closing, I, along with my fellow student council members, strongly urge the board to reconsider adopting the Fairview policy. Let's not change something that's already working. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Case, I have 6 grandchildren in the
You can maybe just hold it. You're taller.
Bob
there, but-
Case, I have 6 grandchildren in the system. I know you're as tired of this as I am. Just some questions. I take it that you have been in the schools and have sat down and talked with the principals of every school and asked them if there are any problems with the bathrooms, and if so, what are they? And I would like to see a written report from you showing what the responses of the administrators and staff are regarding bathroom policies. Number 2 is I am concerned that it is a Fairview. Have you also looked at other Class A schools that have the same rough population as we have? And the other one is just let's get over with this and let's start talking about education. This is just becoming insane. Finally, the cost. I really have some concerns. If you hire a third lawyer, if you do, and I hope you don't, who on this board is versed enough in the law that you could look at the 3 opinions and determine which one of those opinions are most legal. I would also like to see a written statement on that also. Mainly, I'd like to see the information you're basing this on in a written format. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sue Riedlinger. I'm an Alpena resident, a parent, and a counselor. When new staff are hired at board meetings, it is always under the condition that they hold the credentials necessary for their jobs. For example, I am licensed as a school counselor on both a national and state level. Many of my colleagues hold degrees and certifications that make mine look like small potatoes. After watching the proceedings of the past several board meetings, I've begun to wonder why we are required to hold these credentials. Our expertise is not being valued. I take my job and the code of ethics of my profession very seriously. I could cite the ways that the proposed bathroom policy directly violates my profession's code of ethics, but there are too many to cite. Instead, I will make a few other points. First, as someone who advocates for all students, I would like to recognize our superintendent and the administration at AHS for navigating these situations with grace and for treating all students with dignity by working out solutions that work for everyone. The board owes our administration a huge thank you for this. The board owes our administration a huge thank you as well to the students for their maturity and acceptance of their peers. Instead of gratitude, they are being faced with a controversial policy to address an issue that they've been handling well and should continue to be trusted with. Second, I would like to point out another reality. We do not have gender-neutral locker rooms in this building. We have a PE requirement for graduation. We have had and will continue to have students in our building who are biologically one sex, but by identification and in appearance are of a different gender. Sometimes these students have transitioned to a different gender before reaching high school. I do not know if they are out to their friends. That is their private health information. Unless they want to discuss it with me, it is also none of my business. If we were to adopt the proposed policy, it would mean that those kids, children we have a responsibility to respect and protect would have the following options. 1, risk outing their biological sex to their peers and staff by going across the school at gym time to change in a gender-neutral bathroom. 2, violate the policy by entering the locker room of their gender rather than their biological sex. Or 3, use the locker room that matches their biological sex but not their gender. This would mean someone who looks like a girl, dresses like a girl, and whose peers consider to be a girl would be using the boys' locker room. Someone who looks like a boy, dresses like a boy, and whose peers consider to be a boy would be using the girls' locker room. Is this a situation that you want AHS staff to navigate? The proposed bathroom policy is unnecessary at best and incredibly harmful to children at worst. We are all human, and we are worthy of dignity, respect, and a school environment that helps instead of harms. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Yvonne LaFave Johnson. I live in Alpena Township, and I'm a proud Alpena High School graduate and a Michigan State alum. I'm here to urge you to stop shopping for agreement to support the effort to violate district policy, as well as state and federal law. Please do not adopt a bathroom policy that targets trans and non-binary children. Make no mistake, what you're calling the student physical privacy policy would target trans and non-binary children. A 2019 peer-reviewed and published research study shows that bathroom restriction policies put gender non-conforming students at a greater risk for sexual harassment and assault. The Fairview policy refers to fostering a mentally healthy, safe environment for all students. All means all. So what about the gender nonconforming students who will be endangered? In your campaign mailers, the 3 newest members of the board claimed, and I quote, "These parents will stand with your teachers for your children." I'm sorry, with our teachers for your children. The mailer also said, "These parents will fight to ensure that all students will receive the very best education possible and will accept nothing less." You were elected to do that. not to paint a target on some children's backs.
Thank you. Anyone further?
Angie Skiba, 635 River Street, Alpena. Taxpayer, AHS graduate, coached many, many years. I am concerned about the safety of all of the students. My concerns are for all of the students. The females belong in the girls' bathroom and girls' locker room. The males belong in the male bathroom and the male locker room. The students who identify as something other than that they were born as, can use the other bathrooms that they are provided for the safety for all, and there are several in the area all around the school. Would you approve of your 14, 15, 16, etc. daughter, her being in a locker room and a 16-year-old boy starts stripping in front of her and changing down to being naked or underwear, or she's already in her bra and panties? So think about that, because that's the reality of what will happen. And same thing for your son. He's in the locker room and all of a sudden 1, 2 girls walk in there and they're just walking in and he's naked. He needs to feel safe too. She needs to feel safe. It's not safe for all. Girls use the girls' bathroom, boys use the boys' bathroom. All the other students who identify as anything else can be safe and use the private area. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we will continue on to our discussion items. Up first, we have the AMA ESD proposed 2024-2025 general fund budget.
So in this weekend's update, I shared a screencast from AMA Superintendent Justin Glusing. This is an annual process where they present the budget to the local LEAs, and then they seek a resolution in support of that budget from the local districts. And so he is available to answer any questions beyond what was in the screencast there. But we would be putting that resolution from the board at our regular meeting. And what was just passed out is for the next item. So, did anyone have trouble accessing the screencast?
No.
Okay. Questions? So then the next item, if I may. Move on to number 2.
Yep, definitely, sorry.
Same thing, so they have some seats on their Board of Education open, and we designate a delegate to go and cast the vote on behalf of APS. And you have, what was just passed out are the 4 candidates that are running, and there are 3 open spaces right now. And so we would need to, again, at the regular meeting, make a resolution identifying the candidates that we want to select, and then identify someone. It does not have to be a board member. I talked to Anna today. I'm available that night, June 2nd, to go and represent the district. But we would pass a resolution saying these 3 candidates and this person, passing that information along. So.
Do we have any type of selection process like we did with previous?
Slide a little closer.
Can you hear me now? All right. Is there going to be any formal process like for the selection like we did with previous boards, or?
It's up to us to decide how we want to do it. So.
Okay.
I feel, have we ever had where we've had, I don't remember.
I think this is the first time we've had more candidates than positions.
Okay.
In the past, it's simply been, we're sending this person to fill that position.
So we need to decide which 3 at our meeting on Monday and come up with a way to decide. I mean, maybe possibly we could use the same procedure we did for the sex advisory group. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, I just think otherwise it's going to be a little awkward, like how do we
Yeah.
fumble through this to
I can
select it?
propose two methods maybe
Sure.
in my update, and then
That'd be
we
perfect.
decide on what it looks like Monday.
Yep.
Okay. And I'd just like to point out, so AMA is supposed to have board members that represent each of the counties, the districts, and right now, all the representatives are from Alpena, and 3 out of the 4 are from Alpena as well, 3 out of the 4 of these candidates. So the only candidate that is from not Alpena County is Lenny Avery. He is from Alcona County. Simply for your consideration, their goal obviously is to have the most diverse representation amongst their 4 districts. And currently, right now, they just have everyone that lives in Alpena.
okay, does anyone have anything further on this? Questions or? Nope. Okay, we will move along to the next item, which is our book study. And
Okay.
I'll kind of turn it over to you.
Sure. We're going to sit there with the intent that this is not an optimal physical arrangement to have a discussion. And we've got the sheet with all the questions that were there. So if you want to take notes or anything like that, you can do that. So if you have a notebook or something you want to write on, you might want to bring it with you. If you'd bring your microphone with you too, we'll meet up there, and then I just want to throw a few slides up on the screen real quick and kind of set this up. So we can make our way down there, and we'll probably need to back away a little bit. I don't think our knees need to touch in the circle.
Are we just going to pass the mic around, or do you want, we all need? Okay.
Yep.
I guess. Tricky. We'll figure it out.
So just to, I don't know if everyone heard us discuss, well, actually, yeah, it was an agenda item. The reason I put this at the front of the meeting is so that we can have this conversation ahead of any business that the district does, not expecting that we'll be able to necessarily apply everything we talk about here, but at least we've had that first conversation around this book before we then start doing actual business items. So that's why it's at the front. And then, okay. Yeah, there's nothing up there though. Yeah, but that's and then can you get the display? This is the presenter notes screen that's there. There we go. Perfect. All right. So, just a reminder, I know it's small, but we talked about at the retreat. These are the PEASL standards that inform the Michigan MASB superintendent evaluation. And it just says that effective educational leaders develop the professional capacity and practice of school personnel to promote each student's academic success. And then some smaller points there, just around, always being in a continuous improvement model and making sure that we're always learning and getting better at what we do. That applies at all levels of the district. more personally, in my evaluation in December, one of the areas that we talked about putting some more effort around was board development. And so actively encouraging board development by providing opportunities, things like that. So that's kind of where this is coming from. But really, the most important reason that we're doing this is to model continuous improvement, but align our actions. Because what we talked about from the beginning to the end with the strategic plan is that we want to align everything we do as best as possible to the strategic plan, the board goals, all the way down to the goals at any level in the district, and then aligning the activities with that. So I want to acknowledge, first off, thanks for being willing to do this and sit here in a circle in front of yourselves and also the community and all of that. Takes a lot of guts to be here and do this. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that this has to be a environment that fosters open and honest dialogue, even when we disagree. So I wanted to take just a couple of moments. Do you have a pen you can write down? And sorry, a marker for just some ground rules here for this kind of discussion. What do you think we could do to foster, what did I say? An environment that fosters open and honest dialogue. And I'm asking the board there. Any thoughts?
Be a good listener, not interrupt.
All right. Be a good listener, not interrupt.
I think, am I on?
Yes.
Nope.
Yeah, if you go straight into it.
Hello? Okay. I think you'll get far more out of us. Much, much more interesting information if we get these study guides before we read the chapters. Because people can their take when they read a book, their take on what they want to focus on can be just wildly different. And I think that's part of the strength of this sort of exercise. But if we don't get a chance to understand what lens the questions are going to look through, it's going to make our comments sort of haphazard and be sort of behind the eight ball. It's just not going to be timely. We're always going to be reacting, and I don't think we're giving us a chance to sort of take our ideas that we glean from this, look at them through this lens, and then decide how we might agree or disagree. So I think we're just missing it.
So these are the questions that have been my update since the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are the questions that have been in your update. The exact same questions. Yeah. That we've had for a couple of weeks.
That's far too small for me to read.
So that was the idea. I put that out at that first board meeting when we talked. Here are the questions, and I've been linking them in the
all right.
update.
Well, I apologize. I'll have to try to find that, and I just have.
Don't
it's
feel
a
bad.
little strip.
I didn't see him either.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we can highlight. I mean, I'm just a paper guy. I mean, it makes it a lot easier for me. So if we can get these so that I can access them more easily, that would be great. But I think that'll really help. Because then I can write on this. I can't necessarily write on my computer either.
Sure. Anything else?
To your question, what should?
Yeah.
Okay.
The idea is I just want to make it as much of a discussion as possible, knowing that we're doing this in public, and there we go.
Understand that we all didn't have the questions or weren't using them, so our conversations will vary based on what our takeaways were from when we read on our own.
Okay. All right. So then I'm in a dual role here of being a participant and a facilitator. And thank you for leaving that, because then everyone's staring at my bald spot with my sitting there. So I'm going to be jumping back and forth. Yeah. Just so everyone knows, the book's broken into a couple of sections, and we're focusing on the first part, which is why school boards fail. And then part 2, which we'll start to have discussions on next month, moves into how school board can become effective. So we've got in part 1 the introduction, knowledge-based failures is chapter 1, skill-based failures is chapter 2, and chapter 3 is mindset failures. So it's not all negative. Again, it talks about why school boards fail, and then the second section, the second part of the book, focuses on what boards can do to succeed. So again, that's pretty small there, but each of the board members have that in their hands there. So we'll just start. The first question is from the introduction, and it's the purpose. And it says, what is the primary purpose of school systems according to the introduction, and why does this matter?
To educate students.
Improve student outcomes, improving our graduation rates and our graduates' college readiness.
I would certainly agree with that, and then just add that the board's deliberation should revolve around goals, and they were given a number of sort of focus areas that those goals could manifest in, and I thought that was quite interesting.
Well, I also appreciate that they were measurable goals. I think sometimes our goals are somewhat vague, and so actually having measurable, specific targets makes it a lot easier to aim at something and hit it. So.
I noticed I noticed on page 35 since we're on the goal discussion, 3 to 5, and
Can you talk a little louder, AJ?
Was really kind of firm on the 3 goals. And the other thing that piqued my interest was guardrails, and I wanted him to do more explanation on that.
So they do go into a chapter later to talk about in-depth guardrails, so that's coming. So how did you react to the 3 to 5 goals with being firm on 3? Positively, negatively?
I understood why they wanted you to keep it at that number, but thinking to the strategic plan where we have 5 pillars and multiple goals per pillar, I didn't see how those two would align necessarily.
Yeah, when we've had those conversations, we could easily have 10 goals underneath each goal area. So how do we manage that? So thank you. Anyone else? Anything on the introduction?
Yeah, I was amazed. I'm still new to the school board, but what I considered, or like how much time we should spend on education was 50% of it, and we could definitely improve on that because since I've been here, we talk a lot about bathrooms and rain gardens, but it really suggests that we spend 50% of our meeting talking about education.
Well, and that's really nothing new. I've been here a touch longer, and I don't think it was any different then, that's one thing I really appreciated out of this is that the focus should be 50% on student outcomes, and that hasn't been anything that I've seen. And in fact, when we do ask questions about specifics, sometimes it was like, well, we don't measure that. And that's not to criticize anybody, but it was something that's quite interesting to me that he actually brings out. That's an area that. Can you hear me now? All right.
Coach voice.
All right. No, so one of the things I'll look at you guys, I guess. This is really awkward, by the way. I'm just going to throw that out there. They want honest and open discussion when we're sitting here in a circle and everybody's staring at us. It doesn't happen. All right. So if you guys didn't read this, it's actually I like it. It's really good. They bring out the fact that the boards, first of all, a lot of states require the boards to have specific education, which is not required in the state of Michigan to have training for boards, which is interesting because everybody brings their own dynamic to it. And that's a state law. That's not a specific thing here. The other thing is that we should have the focus on the students at least 50% of the time with the boards, a discussion. I have never seen that, even before I was on the board. And it's, I'm going to be a little critical here, please forgive me, but measurable outcomes in education is kind of a weird thing because I come from healthcare where everything's measurable, and so that's one thing I've had a little bit of a challenge with, and that's one thing I really appreciated out of this is he said, hey, even if it's uncomfortable, we have to measure those things. Okay? Can you all hear me now? Yes. All right.
I found it interesting that we sat in a training from MASB, and they told us, your job is set policy and evaluate the superintendent. Now we get into this book, and he says, you should be doing a lot more than that. And that was actually repeated in the second training we had from MASB, policy and your evaluation. And I even heard that from former board members. So we're doing a 90-degree shift here, or 180.
I would say wait until later in the book. It kind of talks about that balance back and forth, and it clarifies it a little bit more. Certainly board goals we need to put in place. And we've had some of those conversations about what does it look like. It looks very different at the classroom level as it does up at the board level, superintendent level. And in all those descriptions, there's a chapter on what's board work and what's superintendent work, and I think through that it'll kind of clarify your role is policy, it is evaluation, but you also have to have goals and that mindset of being focused on student outcomes, and that happens in a variety of ways. So I wouldn't say it's a 90%. Or a significant shift. I think just right now he hasn't kind of gone through everything in the chapters we've read.
And I know we're kind of getting ahead because what AJ's talking about is kind of in the next chapter, but I think that was part of what he's saying is that school districts, the states are not really training school boards on what to do. And I think, was it Texas was the only state really that has legislation on training their school boards. That really all we've ever done is governance and superintendent evaluation, and so obviously a lot of that is needed, but at some point is it needed year after year after year? Like, where can we start moving forward where it's not all MASB governance type of issues? So it
would split 50-50 on that, and that requirements of trainings 50-50 statewide, but only 4 states out of that 25, Arkansas, Rhode Island, Texas, and West Virginia, had specific student outcome-based training.
Yeah.
We're behind Arkansas.
If I can go back a little bit.
yes, please.
Back to the.
I'm totally like type A, so the fact that we're not.
No, just to the 50% monitoring reports from the superintendent. Like, I would really like to see that. I know when I watched a few board meetings before I was actually on the board, there was discussion about truancy in the numbers. And I haven't heard anything since. So just like updates on that or updates on certain things would actually be really nice to know. So I think that'd be a great thing.
Yep.
Well, I think I'm sorry. Did you say something? Okay. Well, I just think moving forward, that's certainly something as we build the agenda that, that can be a real focus and a goal of the boards is to try to ensure that at least 50% of the agenda is focused on those things. That's certainly a reasonable goal to set. And like he says in here, you're probably not going to hit it right away, but that's okay.
I think one clarification there is, too, it's 50% of the time, not necessarily 50% of the agenda items,
But again, what are you spending your time on? So, you know, you do have board business that you have to conduct, and a lot of times it's not directly related to student outcomes. How much time do we spend on that?
Well, that's a hard thing to measure, though, you know, because you don't know what that's going to end up with as far as time is concerned.
Yeah.
Necessarily.
Yep, absolutely.
I thought it was also interesting that he made it a point that we are here for the students and the adult perspective. We are here for the students, and we shouldn't be lean one way or the other on what the adult perspective on things. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
he spent a lot of time talking about that as well.
Yep. I think through a couple of the chapters, he hits that home, so.
No, we're still on the first question. That's why
We're only on question 2 of 30.
Well, we're jumping around.
And we're just starting on 2. So.
And this is only 50% of our agenda.
So, yeah, again, the questions are simply there. We don't have to stick to that. We did, the state training is in chapter 2, I think, knowledge, where they talk about it. So we are kind of covering, you know, just having an open discussion about the first 4 chapters that we've, or sections that we've read. So, yeah. So, I get, you know, the next question is, what's the takeaway from the story with Josh? Sarah, you kind of talked about it, you know, making decisions that are in the best interest of, well, I don't want to characterize it for anyone, but, you know, that's his stated point, that making decisions that are in the best interest of the students versus taking the easy way out or making decisions that are best interest of adults.
I had 2 thoughts on that. One was, I thought, you know, this was a very personal, but also very anecdotal experience that he had, and it was clearly transformative for him and very moving. So I found myself thinking as I was reading that, I hope he isn't going to base the entire book off of this anecdotal feeling, you know, that he's developed. And I guess as I've gone ahead, I think I have mixed feelings on whether that happened or not. But that was my feeling as I read that. So my honest takeaway. But my question is, what wasn't the intended takeaway? I suppose that could be about a million things. So do we have any guidance on what he is getting at wasn't the intended takeaway?
So I think a little bit later after that, might be in the start of the second one, he addresses, and it is, I can't think, I know it's in the lower left-hand corner of one of the pages, but
I'd just like to appreciate the thought.
I mean, I know he says different times that, you know, these are things that should not be your focus, and I appreciate that. So maybe that's what you're referring to. But I mean, there could be a lot of things that weren't the takeaway based on your own subjective reading of the text.
Page 30, he says, wanting to make a difference, however, is not enough. The moral of Josh's story isn't that closing schools solves every problem. That's foolishness. The moral is that public education is vital. Our nation will not long survive if our public school systems are not supported and uplifted on behalf of our nation's children. In service of that, education leaders must be prepared to engage whatever adult behavior change is necessary to improve student outcomes, even if it's difficult or unpopular.
So wanting to make a difference is not the takeaway.
Back to, I think he's, you know, I think he's talking more about that decision to either close or not close. It's more of that bigger philosophical point of we have to stay centered.
Remote.
Sorry. Do I have to repeat all that? But again, this isn't my interpretation. Mine is one of 8 people sitting here. So I think his bigger point is that public education is vital, and it's grounded in doing what's best for the students. All right. So, I guess let's jump to chapter 1. And what does the distinction between inputs, outputs, and outcomes matter? Why does it matter? Chapter 1.
Chapter 1. Hold just a second, Dave.
Yeah.
I find that fourth question or mindset, where if people had a disempowering mindset about you and what impact did it have. And
Are you getting ahead again?
no, front page, fourth question.
Oh, you went back to the introduction.
Yeah, I said just a second,
okay.
David.
Oh, yeah.
I find that kind of funny because to have that question there, because actually in these hallowed halls was where there was a fair amount of disempowering directed at me. Right there in the counseling section.
I feel like we're close to a moment here. Do you wanna tell me more?
I told the counselor what I wanted to do. No, actually, you went through one of those tests where they, what you want to do.
Aptitude test.
Thank you. Yeah. And they said, well, you don't want to do that. I said, yeah, I do. Well, you'll never be successful. End quote.
Yep.
So, I don't know if it changed my mindset, but I just find that interesting that the very counselors that are supposed to be promoting. But the other option or other part of that conversation was, well, you need to go to college. I said, no, I don't. Yeah, you do. I said, no, I don't. You'll never be successful if you don't go to college. End quote.
I had an experience when I was in school too that I guess it wasn't exactly disempowering, although it could have been. I had a teacher who was very strict, which was great, but her daughter was in charge of the music hour at our school, and so we went to sing some very silly songs in music hour, and I was not so interested, so I may have misbehaved a little bit, a little teensy bit. And eventually, her mother, my teacher, took me aside and said, well, Eric, my daughter tells me that you have no interest or aptitude for music, so you should just go to the library and do book reports during that time. And I said, fine, that's okay, because, I guess I was the kind of kid I wasn't about to, let her tell me who I was. But, in fact, it maybe, kind of made me sort of steel my resolve. Yes, I really am interested in this, so maybe it wasn't such a bad story after all, but I thought it was quite interesting that it worked out the way that it did, and it just maybe kind of is something that we should keep in mind, is that we sometimes the strong kids are going to be fine no matter what we do to them, but it's the kids who are vulnerable who maybe need extra help and direction, and we should be careful. That was sort of my takeaway thinking about that story.
Yeah. Okay. I had a counselor tell me, or principal, I don't remember who, I think it was a principal in high school, it said, we didn't expect you to be like your sisters. I had older sisters, and now I'm a doctor and they're not, so it all worked out in the end. So and then of course I had teachers and staff that were incredibly empowering and saw through the knuckleheadedness that I brought to school every day, and they worked with me and encouraged me. So, where in life have people had an empowering mindset, and that made all that difference? Or, yeah, I think you were going to say something. Because there's lots of, certainly powerful stories of support and that. Mr. Wazalewski, he was my 7th grade English teacher. And he put up with a lot, and I worked really hard for him because he saw through everything I was doing to cause trouble in the classroom and everything. Certainly felt more confident. I had no idea what I wanted to do or what path or anything like that, but I felt like I could succeed in this classroom.
On the next item, I just wanted to say I really enjoyed the continuous improvement steps. They feel to me just like how you get business done. So I very much like those.
Yeah. Yeah, and each one of those is going to be detailed out more in the coming chapters. So. Yeah. Yep. So just real quick, chapter 1, and inputs, outputs, and outcomes. Anyone want to quickly touch on the difference?
Didn't know we were going to get quizzed.
That's right.
Well, just right on page 41, the start of the chapter 1, the second paragraph says, inputs are resources and activities invested in a particular program or strategy that are usually knowable at the beginning of a cycle and that are a measure of effort applied. So things like staff, books, programs, facilities, buses, etc. Outputs are the result of a particular set of inputs that are usually knowable in the midst of a cycle, and that is a measure of the implementation of the program or strategy. Things like assessment scores, benchmark results, grades, financials, and anything else that measures implementation of the inputs throughout the course of the school year. So.
And I think here they touched on formative and summative assessments. Again, later in the book, they go into great detail of talking about the purpose and how we use those. So that clarification will be coming as well.
Well, can we hear me before I get yelled at? Okay. Thank you. No, I appreciate that because we have to measure outcomes for the inputs we put in. That's something I think as a board that's important for us to do, and any job for that matter, is if we implement an intervention, not only do we track that intervention as it's being implemented, but we have to determine if it was effective at the end of that. And I think sometimes that's an area that we'll fall a little short to go back and say, hey, did what we implement work? Yep. Or did it not? And if it didn't work, get rid of it. And if it did work, then we can move forward with it. I think that that's a step. Sometimes we get so focused on the implementation to create intervention that we don't measure if we were actually accomplished anything. So I do really appreciate that part.
Yeah.
Well, I was reading this discussion. I had two thoughts that came to mind that would not leave my brain. One was Skinner's black box, and the other one was Schrodinger's cat. You know, is the cat alive or dead? What's going on? Because when you talk about inputs, outputs, and outcomes, you're looking at things on either side of the box, and you're sort of this question of getting into, well, what's in the box, is very challenging. And I think it'll be interesting seeing to what degree he discusses how do we look into the box, or do we even need to? You know, is it enough to work with these things that are on the outside edges? And maybe it is. If your statistics are good and you're following sort of evidence-based stuff. So I thought that was really quite interesting.
Yeah.
The challenge for this group, page 42, that center paragraph, last couple sentences. School systems only exist for one reason: to improve student outcomes, not for adult outcomes, not for adult inputs, not for student outputs. School systems only exist to improve student outcomes. All other activities should be in service of that sole reason for existing. Are we willing to trim the ones that aren't? Because when we were sitting at the strategic summit, I was sitting with John Capeless. Yep, I didn't want to butcher that last name for him. And I said, it seems like we're trying to do too much here, John. We're getting very top-heavy in what we're trying to do. And I forget the conversation, but there was more to his response. And basically he said that we're reacting to legislative needs. If I recall this conversation, now I forget where I was going with all that.
Are we willing to trim?
Are we willing to trim? Yeah. If we're if we boil it down to improvement of student outcomes, are we willing to get rid of extra things?
So I'm not making any determinations here because I don't know what we're specifically speaking about. I think
I don't have one in mind
yeah,
either.
I mean that is sort of the idea of this, focusing on what we think is going to have the most impact, implementing it, monitoring it, seeing if it works, adjusting, accordingly. If you're talking legislation, if you're talking student needs, all sorts of different things. It would be wonderful if every student and staff member came 100% ready to learn and at the same level of readiness. That would be wonderful. I don't think there's anyone that say they don't want that, but then the reality crashes in that we have students on such a broad spectrum of academic, performance, emotional needs, all sorts of different things. And so, again, how do we tie it back to this impact student outcomes? If we're doing something to address a need that is very common in all of our students, to get them ready to learn, is that directly related to student outcome? I mean, you got to kind of walk through that. There's a lot of things we're doing we didn't have to do 50 years ago in education, and it's not because we just wanted to do more and more and more and more. Laws changed, reality of home life and student preparedness situations changed, and when they walk through the door, wherever they are, we have to meet them and get them to wherever they need to be.
But that's the hard part. If they're saying that the school system only exists to improve student outcomes, well, if you don't have a shared definition of what that outcome is, then you have different goals at the end. And that's not something that can necessarily be dictated by a board. That would take an entire system buy-in. Because like you just said, and I 100% agree, outcomes, we use standardized testing as a measure, but that doesn't take into account the kid that had a horrible day and is just going to click the boxes.
Yeah.
Versus outcome, are we preparing a student for the community, to work in the businesses, to be a functioning member of society? These are so many different variables, and if you can't agree on the actual definition of that, how in the world are you going to actually aim at that?
Yeah.
And so I understand what he's saying. Hopefully he clarifies it as we go through the book a little bit.
There's a section on setting goals and what does it look like and that. I've said this to my team so many times recently. We will define it, and we will implement it, and we will measure it. And if our definition is not right or the implementation isn't right, we'll adjust. But let's say, as a board, what are those key outcomes? You're not going to be 100% right. You're not going to hit every outcome that is critical to it. But let's start there. 3 to 5 goals. Pick these things. This is what we are focusing on as a board, as a district. And hopefully we see that improvement and we can move on to the next one or those sorts of things. We need to, part of this process is us deciding these are those points that we're going to focus on. Speaking of reporting too, I just wanted to go back to that. So we are building a strategic plan timeline with the team. So we're putting dates on the calendar when our data, our fall student assessment data is going to be presented to the board. It's also being presented first at the building level, then up to the principal level, ad staff, and then ultimately at the board. So you will have a calendar of these are the different activities tied to the strategic plan when they're going to be reported to the board and the community. And the goal is to have that, very well fleshed out, by the start of the school year. Chapter 2.
Grab your microphone. Sorry, AJ.
So could we pick out which what do they call that? Founder focused, contribution focused, patronage, outcome focused. Did anybody have an opinion on which one we were? It started 40.
Yeah, 47 is where they talk about the outcomes focused.
44 and 48. Yeah. Because I had to read through that twice.
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit of all of them.
Yeah, I think we're a hybrid.
Yeah, I don't think it's any one.
Well, then I got to the last one on page 48. In the bottom paragraph on page 48, a governing body may not demonstrate any of the aforementioned characteristics sufficiently enough to characterize it as any of these four types. In the cases where this is true, it generally suggests that the organization is entirely unmoored and that it has become a special case of a patronage board where the beneficiaries are the employees and governing body members. In these cases, the organization may exist only to provide employment for the staff and a sense of authority for the governing body members. Because I couldn't really say that we were an outcome-focused.
I think that's kind of the goal, right?
That's
definitely
should be
it's
the
like
goal,
we want to
but
get there. The smart goals.
Smart goals.
When you read through that, though, I really didn't think that that's where we were. And then that kind of shifted us over to that paragraph that I read by default.
Then there's room for improvement, isn't there?
Hopefully, yeah.
I thought that paragraph, though, was a little bit of an example of, I think sometimes the author has an idea in his head, and he can't imagine a universe where this idea is not the overarching truth of the situation. And I think that sometimes leads him to make assumptions about people and boards and things like that. So I wouldn't get too broken up about that. I think we're better than that. But
yeah, and you're going to see bits and pieces of each of these. But again, this book is about where do we want to go, what direction, who do we want to be.
And just looking at the rest of the questions about Chapter 1, the harm in a school board being intensely focused on adult inputs, I think he's not entirely wrong about that, because I think if we do that to the exclusion of student outcomes, we really aren't doing our jobs. But I think it's kind of funny how he makes adult inputs sound like the devil's own work. And I don't think they're always so bad, because we are adults and we're going to have inputs. There really is no way around that. But it's good that he has a healthy skepticism about that, I guess. And the analysis of the school board conferences, I thought that was really interesting. When you look at who's giving the sessions, you know what they're going to be about. So I thought that was really insightful.
Yeah, but if you look under where it says designed to fail, it really focuses on focusing on the adult input as the student's input. I just lost it. But it really focuses on about just how loud different parties can be at a time. My finger swiped it away. I'll get back to you on that one.
We can come back to that.
I guess to reiterate the point that I made earlier in our training, page 52, Texas passes a law, and then he lists out the things that the law stated there on top of page 53. And like I said earlier, it a pretty big shift from what we were trained at.
Just for everybody in the audience, what we're talking about, I think it's kind of an interesting dynamic. It's talking about why school boards are kind of set up for failure, and it talks about nationwide school board conference sessions, so actual school board training. Can you hear me okay? All right. But it's interesting because they give a percentage on this, like who's actually teaching these school board sessions, because they're saying, this is actual formal training for school boards, and 40% of it is from vendors, 20% from central office-based staff, and so these are special interest groups, if you will, even for the school board training that exists. So even when there's formal training, it still sets the boards up for failure. It's one of the points that he's bringing out, and that's what we're discussing, just so everybody's kind of on board with that.
All right, chapter 2. So chapter 2 is about skill. So the first one was about knowledge-based failures, and then skill-based failures. He did make the point that, in his opinion, the knowledge-based failures are the, knowledge is the some kind of the least powerful of the levers.
Yeah, knowledge is a driver of adult behavior change, but it is the smallest of the 3 levers.
There you go. Yep.
Gold star for you, Anna.
First sentence of the chapter. Got lucky on that one.
So, just kind of, what essential skills are often lacking among school boards? Can you identify specific cases where a lack of skills led to poor outcomes for the school district?
I mean, this is kind of what Eric was talking about with, you look at the school board goals, the original board goals on page 60, and I think that is typically how school boards have functioned, just simple, improve student achievement, be transparent, have quality schools, have financial stability, but then, how do you work into SMART goals?
With numbers,
With
measurable
numbers,
things.
With measurable numbers, yeah.
This is something I've been hounding on for a long time.
I was going to say, isn't that what we argued
we're going to improve outcomes. We're going to expand access. Those are not measurable. And they sound wonderful. They're nice and fluffy. They're pretty, but you can't measure it to see if you've actually succeeded at it. And that's one thing he points out, and I love that.
Yeah, well, I think in AJ, kind of when you talked about there's so much, right? And I think that talked about failure to be focused when setting goals. The school board that tries to focus on everything is a school board that ultimately focuses on nothing. So you kind of have to pick a couple of things and hone in on those. And
well, even in this chapter on the meeting agenda question too, when you look at the 2 different agendas and you see the one was, I think, 5 or 6 hours and it was all adult input, and then the next one,
It was 8.
Oh, 8 hours, sorry. All adult inputs, and I think the second one was 3 hours, and I think half of it was, so what a difference.
I'm dying to know what they talked about in executive session for 3 hours.
2:08 a.m.
Yeah.
We've had those meetings.
I was going to say,
True.
You've been through it.
it's a little bit more brief chapter, I think.
Yeah. Chapter 3. So then this is chapter 3, mindset-based failure. How do fixed mindsets contribute to the ineffectiveness of school boards? What steps can be taken to shift the mindset of board members from fixed to growth-oriented? He referenced Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset. What difference did coaching make to school boards that used it? Why do you think that's the case? And how does changing mindset of board members influence the overall culture and performance? And just want to clarify, he's not saying changing the minds. He's talking about the mindset and how you look at issues and performance.
To the first page there, I didn't think we fell into the "this is the way we've always done it" category. I did think that was a mark for us.
I feel like we've tried, AJ, right? Even when we think about the strategic plan in the past,
our strategic plan has often been helped by what MASB. We've used them to help with the strategic plan, and we said, what, this time let's do it like a hospital would or a business would, and how do we, we don't have to do it the way we've always done it. We can do better. So
Even the Ryman.
What?
Even the Ryman survey.
Yeah.
That's a big change.
Yep. And you're sitting here
Yeah.
doing this. I did check where the recommendation came from. It was not the superintendent that had used the book that recommended it. He was passing it on from other positive experiences. You had asked if there were others that had done this.
Oh, yeah, I was curious to see if anybody else had implemented this.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it was way back at the beginning. I didn't read all of them, but I kind of looked at some of the different. There was reviews of the book and just talking about different school districts or superintendents that had given the review and their thoughts on the book, and I thought it's pretty interesting, widespread of areas. So.
Well, and for me, I think the big takeaway is the ability to be vulnerable in that growth mindset of maybe this is the way we have always done it, but is there a different way to do it? Or I have all the answers, and then I come in and realize I don't. Or his example of I think wanting to put new computers in or something without actually understanding what the issue was. And again, I would say this is pretty vulnerable right here, having a conversation in front of a live audience.
And I do appreciate their patience and understanding in this.
Yes. Well, thank you. Well, not thank you. On behalf of them.
On behalf of them.
Well, and that's one thing I do appreciate. There were some things, and there still are some things that are just because it's always been that way. I know there's some budgets that come up for outside organizations, and I'm like, what are they for? We just vote for it, And we always ask the questions, but sometimes it just feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I do appreciate over the last couple of years we've stepped outside of that, such as the Raymond study, right? Am I saying that correctly? Yeah, Raymond, and then of course the Kaizen approach to strategic planning, which is outside. That's outside the education, and that's one thing this gentleman brings up. He's not from education, and yet this is what he teaches as school board training, and because you can bring in all kinds of different perspectives, and we all have vast skill sets from where we come from. That it's okay to have those differences, and that's one thing that he brings out, and I like that.
Are we good with that question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Page 76. We jump ahead or wherever you want to.
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
I thought that was a rather hard-hitting 76 into the break on page 77 there. The difference between enabling and scoring. I guess I thought that was very challenging for not only us, but also for all of the staff. Yeah, we can put everything there, but that doesn't mean it's going to work.
I like that in the light of the, the problem with willingness to change is not enough. Good intentions are not enough. You have to be basing these decisions on something more solid than that. I thought that kind of made his point.
Yeah, he reiterates that at the bottom of page 76. Intention is not enough. Impact matters. The powerful temptation is to be satisfied with how hard adults tried. To accept effort and intention as proxies for results and impact. Because we can always pat ourselves on the back and say, well, we tried really hard.
Yeah.
They just weren't ready for that level. Or whatever.
And again, it's about student outcomes. All this other stuff is great and might lead to, but in the end, what are the student outcomes?
Well, and what happens when they don't meet up? That's when it starts to hurt. When the outcomes don't meet up.
Yeah, but again, there's that continuous improvement mind of, we define it, we set the goals, we work, we implement, and see the results, and adjust according to that. Versus you didn't hit that goal, you failed, and let's make wholesale changes.
It's kind of like the old analogy, if you aim at nothing, you're bound to hit it, right? If you don't set a goal, at least you have something to aim at. Even if you don't completely reach it, you're moving in a direction and you can adjust, until you do move in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, I think, all of us, at least the last couple of years I've been here, we often look at setting up opportunity, but are we actually getting anything for that time and effort,
Apropos of question 3, I think it was kind of interesting, the discussion. He's very brave, the author, because here he basically says on page 71, in essence he says, these findings are anecdotal, but he sticks to his vision because he's really, really sure, and I have to admire that. And I think it's going to bear fruit, but I think that's pretty interesting, and it does, though it is maybe just a step above anecdotal, the study does imply that there could be some real benefits from this. And I wonder, does he follow later in the book? Does he have, where we haven't read yet? Does he have further studies to cite? I wonder.
No, it's not real, citing study heavy. He uses again examples of where they've moved assessment data and things like that, but. To me, this is more about that, just thinking through how we approach these things, giving us ideas on how we could then decide to set up our systems of accountability, our goals and those things, versus, the research, citing the research on things like that.
Well,
of examples of districts using this and that.
Well, and that's why I asked you if anybody else has used it and what the outcomes were.
Mm-hmm.
He gives a very convincing argument, but what's to say this is true and what if it's not? It's kind of like, theory. It's, we teach it and learn it as though it's the truth, but is it? Because you can find 3 theories that contradict each other. Yeah. And so, but I understand what you're saying. It's food for thought. It helps to open our minds to explore different options, which is good. But I see where Eric's coming from, too. It's like, is this the gold standard? We don't know.
Yeah.
But it's still really good to think about.
Well, it's a very honest book. Like on page 73, he discusses a lot of his own failings, and so this is all very personal for him. And again, I think there is maybe some projection. He's projecting into other people his own failings, thinking, well, I had this failing, you must have it too. But, that's okay because it's a very honest book. And I think that anybody who writes a book like that, you can glean, something really fascinating from that person's, very authentic and very sincere experience.
What about when he says every board member harbors a secret desire to be recognized for our brilliance, praised for it, and lifted up as the champions of all things student-related? I don't feel that way. Do you guys feel that way? I mean...
I think that's the projection I was talking about.
Yeah, exactly. That was, yeah.
All right.
Miss Sarah, you've been kind of quiet over there. For all your notes I seen flipping past.
I did my homework.
So is there anything anyone else wants to share at this point?
I just think my big takeaway was just really being self-aware, in my role, and not just being here because I was a former teacher, or my role is what would benefit my kids. Just trying to be really reflective on, that it's not about me or my kids. It's about all kids, and not what I bring to the table, I guess. So just being self-aware more.
I was the story of Ignaz Semmelweis, that made me sad, because it wasn't until fellows like that Dr. Lister came along later and said, hey, by the way, we can actually use antiseptics to prevent this sort of thing. And the fact that it ended very badly for this poor man, who made such a contribution. That just made me, want to be, sensitive to those people who have ideas. Sometimes they're a little bit out of the box, and I think that's sometimes that's maybe a good warning to us. Sometimes there'll be an idea that's out of the box, maybe like this gentleman's idea in his book, but don't discount it, because he may really be onto something. So I thought that was a wonderful story, but again, it made me sad.
Yeah.
Are we sliding into chapter 4, or are we calling that?
That was part of chapter 4, so we can.
We jumped,
Oh,
but we didn't
sorry.
jump with questions. So
Yep,
that's
yep.
what I was.
Yep, let's move on to chapter 4. Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. That's the story of Ignaz Semmelweis. Who had, and I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but just for the audience, he worked in, he was going back and forth between the morgue and the delivery room, and they didn't wash hands, and so he was the first one to realize that washing hands greatly preserved the life of the mother and newborn child. And because that wasn't the practice, he was basically run out of the practice of medicine, and then, yes, took his own life at the end. But
No, he was.
then later they found out he was right.
Yeah, well, he was killed when he went to the insane asylum.
Oh, he was killed?
Yeah, died of injuries
Oh,
received.
yeah.
But
So, again, that could be, this is the way we've always done it, like we talked about before. But the other question is, as you read the remainder of the chapter, reflect on the question prompts with the text and replay your video to come up with examples. Oh, sorry, we don't have a video. What are your examples from your own life where you've replayed your videos and changed your behavior? Sorry, got a little confused. He did talk about your life. What was it like for you? What makes that challenging to do? So basically self-reflection.
Yeah, I thought this chapter was good at that, asking questions just for us to self-reflect on, and like, what is an example of a time when my choices, my adult behavior may have made it harder for students to be successful?
yeah, that one kind of hurt.
Yeah.
Speaking of hurt, when I read on page 91 the stuff about the various kinds of pretending, my question was, dude, who hurt you? Because there's, again, some of this stuff, if somebody, came and like accused me of some of this to my face, I would take offense because it's pretty loaded. But I understand he's talking about his experience and things that he has noticed, anecdotally. I think, again, it's valuable in its honesty, and there's probably something there. So I think the concept of any pretending that one might do is, I think that's a worthy thing to take note of, because it could take many forms.
Page 86, under the first bold heading there. As education leaders serving on school boards throughout the nation, we have to be willing to be we have to be willing to ruthlessly evaluate our own behaviors. We have to be willing to accept that our behaviors could be at the heart of what is killing our children academically. And he goes on from there. I wrote in the margin, is it just our behaviors? What about the admin and teachers in that?
I think you could take the word school board out of that and just put educational leaders, period.
Mm-hmm.
And it would accomplish that. I mean, because we can clearly look at data from the past 15, 20 years, and we can see downward slides in certain areas. And did we accept that and make clear changes? Maybe we did, maybe we didn't, or did we double down and just do it because we've always done it that way? And so I think every one of us has to look at that.
One of the things that I don't think he's touched on a lot yet, though, is what governments sometimes force on us. You know, if we think back to, you know, the COVID time, you know, were any of these mandates and things that we were forced to do, were any of these good for student outcomes? I think we know now the answer is absolutely not. It was terrible. And yet it was forced on us. We had to do it. And I'm hoping by the time we get to the end of the book, he'll acknowledge that at some point.
Recall. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Well, I feel like, you know, sometimes I felt like we got kind of beat up in those first few chapters, so hopefully it's like, all right, we know we, like, okay, slap on the wrist. So how do we move forward, right, like that? I mean, we hear that loud and clear year after year. The community cares about the kids and our achievements, their achievements, whether it's graduation, whether it's college or test scores, and so how do we move in that direction and be better? So
Especially when possibly the means to get to that aren't always agreed upon. You know, I agree, you know, in the beginning of this book he said that everybody goes on school boards with good intentions, and that's true. There's not a one of us here that is here for a reason to gain power or whatever. I will be honest with everyone in this room, this is the last thing I would like to be doing on this beautiful night. I joined the school board to try to make a difference for the good of our kids. My kids are in this district. Where it's sometimes challenging, though, is student focus is we might not always agree upon how we get to that goal. And that's, I think, where a lot of the contention comes, is we all want what's best, but we might not agree on how to get there. And having open dialogue, discussion, and be kind and open and considerate is something that we all need to be aware of in reaching those goals.
I think part of all of this is he really is looking to have us disrupt whatever our plan was. He's looking to have us, you know, have that plan disrupted and re-examined, which I think is, you know, a very interesting idea. And Anna, when you said slap on the wrist, I think his intent is really more like a punch in the mouth. I think it was, I've heard this attributed to Mike Tyson. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You know, I think that's what he wants to do to us, you know, in a way. And I think that's okay. I mean, he wants us to like double over a little bit and then really, really examine what we're doing. I think it's very brave and kind of fun.
I think I like one of the last statements on page 93. If you have not fully internalized the notion that student outcomes don't change until my behavior change, then nothing else in this book will help you serve children. The remainder of this remainder is written with that as a foundation.
All right. Anything else? I think that's a great segue. Yeah, so, you know, what is it? Tear them down to build them up kind of thing. And the next chapters are, set one, focus the mindset, clarify priorities, monitoring progress, align resources, and communicate results. So it does now get into, again, his ideas on what we should be doing, what these systems look like, and goes into obviously a lot more depth inside each of those chapters. So your homework, I didn't have this printed up. You do have the sheet. I'll have to let you know, but it is in the update. It shows you month by month what chapters we're going to be looking at. I can't pull that up quickly here, but I'll just highlight that in the update too, letting you know. So,
you can pull it up and print it on the
Yeah, it's downloadable, so.
Maybe we can bring a couple copies for Monday.
Yep. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, we'll bring copies. I can bring extra copies too. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
upstairs. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, well, I really appreciate you all being willing to sit here. We'll have maybe a charcuterie tray or something in the middle. What? Retreats, yeah. Well, this isn't a retreat.
Yes, please.
And thank you all for sitting in and listening with us.
Okay. Up next, we have policy-related items. Policy 6320, bid purchasing policy.
Did you catch that, Anna? Or how did we catch that we didn't have enough votes?
Oh, the lawn care?
Yeah.
Yeah, well. Gordon.
Gordon caught it? Okay.
He let me know, so thank you, Gordon. That's a,
Yes.
that's a different topic. This is just our bid policy, but about the lawn care bid, just kind of moving ahead, and I can touch on that, yep. But thank you, Gordon, for that.
All right, so we put this policy back on because we still have bids that are coming up, as we have on the agenda here. Good news, it looks like we will have money left over from the Safe Warm Dry Bond to go into sizable projects in the coming year. So there was some questions about the bid policy, so really just wanted to bring it back up and make sure that everyone has a common understanding of why we do things the way we are. Services is one of those words in that policy that has some question around it. I'm not really advocating that we change this policy. I think if we just, again, talk through why it's written the way it is and how that looks as we go forward, that would be, I think, in our best interest. But stepping aside, in our bid packet that goes out to the vendors, you'll remember it has that statement that the board has the right to refuse any and all bids. That is being removed from our packets going forward, so it doesn't look confusing to a vendor. It does stay into our policy because, again, in clarifying, in the policy that refers to if the bids are way above what we wanted to approve, or they have timeline issues, or there's something that we're concerned about with the bid, you have that right to refuse any and all of those bids. So again, just kind of making sure that we all understand how that is. We could put it in the policy with more language clarifying that, but I think really, coming to that understanding would be better than rewriting the policy in that area. So, Mary, do you want to kind of walk through this, or do you want me to do that? And we're kind of basing this on, that question about services. Do services need to be bid or not bid? And so Mary has the full explanation of
Thanks, Matt.
when they do and when they don't.
So I believe the first page in the packet is the one that kind of looks like this. It tells you about federal and then Michigan to compare the two.
Gonna talk really loud, Mary.
So federal funds has different levels to the requirements for bid. So a micro purchase, which is services, equipment, or supplies that are under $10,000. You do not need to bid them in a formal RFP. They just ask that you look for and make sure that the price is reasonable. So the next step up is a small purchase, which is 10,001 to 250,000. You have to receive multiple price quotes. So you call vendors that work within the parameters of what the federal guidelines say. So you possibly try to call a minority business or local vendors or someone where, you're just required to get 3 quotes. However, Michigan law has a lower parameter, so this is where we start following the Michigan law versus the federal law. And then the next step up in the federal is that if it exceeds the small purchase, so $250,001, so you are required to do the formal competitive bid process. So you have to put your RFP out, you have to follow the guidelines of advertising and different things like that. Make sure it goes out to as many vendors as possible. The federal does not allow you to exclude out-of-state vendors. So you have to watch for that. And construction under federal is different than Michigan also, because the limit with construction under federal funds is $2,000, and if it's over $2,000, you have to have a formal RFP process. So the ones that Simon is going to be presenting tonight are the formal processes where they were advertised and sent out to different vendors, and the ones that we have done for the bond in the past are considered formal RFP processes. Construction, especially in the state of Michigan, we're required to upload them to Sigma, and vendors from across the state register with Sigma. So when something comes up with their code, they get an automatic email to say that there's a bid opportunity for them. So when I upload those to Sigma, they go out to thousands of vendors, depending on which category it is. So when you look at Michigan, Michigan school code requires you to bid supplies, material, and equipment. It does not include services. So anything over a lump sum must be bid through a formal competitive process according to Michigan law if it's over $30,512. And I've included the MDE memo in regards to the bid levels for Michigan, the bid thresholds. So even if we're using federal funds in the state of Michigan, we have to adhere to the $30,512. So anything over that has to go through a formal bid process, according to Michigan law. The caveats is what you're paying for it with. If you're paying federal or you're paying state, then services are excluded or included. Construction under Michigan law has a lower bid threshold of $20,959. So when you look at our policy, and I had highlighted in it all applicable federal and state statutes, that is where it differentiates the necessity to bid services or not to bid services. And quite honestly, we bid a lot of our services out because they're just, it's better for the district to go ahead and bid it. But when we have like an emergency or a big electric bill or something like that, it would be very tedious for us to have to bid those kinds of things out and get the work done in a timely manner that we need to get it done. So, you have a pipe burst at the last minute and you have no idea how much it's going to go over. So Michigan School Code allows for an emergency repair without the bid process. So I've also included in the packet little pullouts from the Edgar, which is the government guidance for federal bids. Anyway, so it just kind of walks you through where it says federal is acquisition of property or services. So that tells you that your services under federal have to be bid. And I just kind of highlighted the pieces that I wanted to draw your attention to so that, you know, it goes into tell you what I had in the spreadsheet about the 10,000, about the different levels and things like that, so that you can see where these laws come from. And I also included in the packet the school code, so you can see where the school code comes from for construction, repair, and renovation, and then also for the procurement of supplies, material, and equipment. And again, you'll notice that Michigan law does not include services in the statement. I feel that we have appropriately applied the policy. The only question is when it comes to services in federal law, you know, it says all applicable. So when it comes to services, the only one that applies to it is the federal law. I know there's a lot there, but I just wanted to give you everything so that you had a good idea and so that you could actually see where the points come from.
Quick question. Are we pretty confident that we don't have too many gray areas where we're not sure, you know, or federal or state funds have been commingled or we're not sure? Does that ever come up, or is that pretty easy to avoid?
So the federal funds are all grant-based, and I have to make sure that when I enter the budget, the revenue that's coming in from the grant equals the expenses that we have budgeted. And those are detailed in the grant application. So we can only spend federal funds on exactly what is written into the grant. I push back quite often. You know, I make sure I watch those grants like a hawk. So just to make sure that we don't do something we're not supposed to be doing.
Wonderful, thank you.
I still had a little question. Perhaps I'm just confused about this. On page 2 there, it's still, you know, the preference shall not apply to any procedures. Go down, the board reserves the right to reject any and all bids. I know we removed that from the agreement that goes out to the contractors, but the fact that that remains in there is somewhat confusing to me because it's not preferenced under another heading. If you go by section, it's a standalone item. It's not a subsection of another item, which would make it fall under that. It's a standalone item, meaning we can reject any and all bids. That's where I'm confused about this. If that's not the case, then maybe we just strike that line from there or put clarification. We can reject any and all bids if they don't meet our criteria or something along that lines, just to clarify it.
I liked Dave's earlier suggestion that we could clarify it if necessary, and I would not be opposed to looking at language towards that end. I think you're right, Eric. If you get into a situation where you are tempted to reject a bid, but you really can't because of some other section, I think that would be wise for, because you know we all know this now. We've been you know, talked to about it. That's great. But, you know, there will be a different board sometime. So I think that would be helpful.
And it would be easy enough to do just to put clarification on that.
Yeah. Any Mary?
So maybe if you enter the conditions under which you can reject any and all bids. So rejecting all bids would be too expensive. Rejecting any bids would be did not return the proper forms with their RFP response. So you can reject them because they didn't return the Iranian thing or the familial, you know, you can reject them outright because they did not return or they did not respond properly to the RFP. There's multiple reasons why you can reject a bid and just pull them out. You've seen before where we've had it did not complete the paperwork in the bid presentations. You could list those, you know, things like that, but then I don't know if that's getting too deep into the weeds, so to speak.
So is it better just to strike it? I mean...
Well, I don't think it's getting too far into the weeds because it obviously there was disagreement on that, and if there's question or concern, that's going to happen again at some point. So clarifying it now so that it doesn't happen again would probably be wise. I would almost say strike it. Maybe because it's spelled out in other areas. Is that even necessary there? Because it says we reserve the right to reject. Well, we don't. We don't have that right unless we meet certain stipulations, apparently.
Perhaps it would be a shorter list if we list the circumstances under which we may not reject a bid. That might be would you think that might be a shorter list than, rather than telling the board what they can reject, maybe tell them when you can't reject it, based on our own bid rules, perhaps.
I don't know, either way is going to have several notations on it, really.
We kind of have that spelled out on the previous page, A, B, C, D, E, on accepting the bids or rejecting it. I think it's there already.
I don't mean to interrupt, but one of my children had an accident, so I have to go. I'm sorry.
Oh, good luck. Sorry, Sarah.
Perhaps you...
Sarah, you good? Do you need anything? Okay.
Perhaps you could take that, the board reserves the right to reject any and all bids, simply move it under that criteria A, B, C, and D, and link it to those as exclusion criteria instead of a standalone item.
Because you could get into the situation where you have a difficult vendor, and then the next time bids come around, they are low bidder by enough to where you can't say, or you can't make the switch, and is a difficult contractor or vendor of some sort.
Yeah. And we have utilized that too. We've had bad experiences, had them come back as the low bidder, and based on, that past performance is a metric, we were able to say we're not going with that.
Could we link that then to this? I think that'd be an appropriate place to put it.
We'll run it by the attorneys and see if they have other examples, and certainly put something down there. Like you're saying, link it to what's already there.
Yeah.
I think the last time we were talking about this, that did come up a little bit, that the negative past performance of a vendor could be considered, but the positive past performance of a vendor perhaps could not be. Am I crazy?
Well, the challenge of the issue we faced was you're not allowed to, and yes, if you word it, that the positive performance, it just can't be because they are a local vendor. That can't be why you're selecting them.
But the disagreement was the fact that it says past performance.
Yep.
Well, we might be looking at the past performance as a bad thing, so we're not going to use them, or past
Possibly
performances,
a
they
good
did
thing.
an excellent job for us,
Yeah.
we want to use them again. If we use a heating man in our house and he's done an excellent job, we'll reuse him again. That's positive performance. That's not allowed, apparently. So perhaps we clarify that as well.
Yeah.
Not to speak for the whole board, but personally, what I'm kind of hearing is the board saying, "Yeah, Mary, go ahead and write down what you want us to know and how you want us to act." And I'm not really joking, because maybe that would be you at least could bring us some language, and if we can haggle over it or whatever. But that might actually be helpful.
Yeah, I mean,
just
I
a
know
thought.
that Dave had said that you guys don't really think that we need to have changes, but I agree with Eric's point of view. I mean, whether it's this board or the next board, it is to us common folks that don't have the background that you do a little confusing. So if between the two of you, if you can come up with something that maybe helps us and future boards understand it better, and then run it by Neola to make sure it's still something that they would warranty, so that we know it's legally sound and yet clarifying for us, would probably be very helpful. So
Yeah. So when you look at positive performance, like if you call up their customers or whatever to get positive performance, or it's a vendor that you previously worked for and you like the job that they did, that makes your bid process unfair, because you don't, if the other company does not have anything negative said about them by their previous customers, and they are the lowest bidder, and you've never worked for them before, it's not fair to award it to a vendor just because you've worked for them before and you like what they did. it takes that fairness out of it, which is what the whole thing is about, is fair and transparent, and so.
Well, and we understand that at this point, and I think we all understand the intent at this point. However, could that question come up again in the future? Absolutely. So if we can clarify it, so it's not an issue in the future, it would be wise to do so.
Right.
Yeah.
Dave and I can definitely sit down together and work on it.
Yeah, and I don't think we're not trying to be difficult.
No,
we're
no.
just trying to
No.
make
I
it
get it.
easier for us and for future boards. So
Yeah, absolutely.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Look for an update on that eventually, and we'll move on to property-related items. First up is the custodial supplies bid.
And just as a reminder, this is a workshop, so you'll be asked to approve these at the regular meeting, so.
I know, I don't like it. Thanks,
Okay,
Monica.
everybody hear me?
Yeah, just talk loud. It's
Okay.
really kind of hard to hear.
First up, we have the consumable and custodial supplies bid. Just the bid tab right now, that's information only at this point. We'll get our formal recommendation together for the board meeting. So a couple things to note, evaluations are based on price, if the product compliance, and purchasing trends from how much of an item we've purchased in the past, and based on how we can purchase it potentially. So, and so you've got the bid tab, and then you've got the last year's, the 24-25 vendor associated with that we purchased for comparison. So.
So at this point, though, no formal recommendations?
No formal recommendation at this time.
Will we be taking action on these on Monday?
Yes,
Okay.
if we can, yeah. I will have that to Dave for his board update for
Okay.
next week's. And I will have the garbage bags here to test. So,
Okay.
we just opened bids on Friday, so that's our.
Oh, okay.
We're
Thank
kind of
you.
running behind. Directly into?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. That's helpful.
Okay. Thanks, Rome. I thought I sounded good.
Start over.
Yeah. So did everybody hear that up here? It's information only at this time. So yes, action. I plan to take action on the regular meeting next Monday. So we'll have all that information to you. So
Have you had bid meetings or just bid open? Because the meetings happen when you open them, or no? Do you have to meet with any of these vendors or not?
no,
Okay.
no vendors were present.
Okay.
But most of them, if not all of them, are returning vendors that we've used in the past. So any questions on custodial consumable supplies right now? You can get any questions you can direct to Dave, and I can definitely answer them before.
If we take into account, amounts, balancing cost for various amounts, will it be pretty easy to tell if we just go through this to pick which was the low bid and will be the recommendation?
Yeah, it'll be pretty easy.
Okay,
Yeah.
except for maybe the trash bags, right?
Yeah, depending on quality of the trash bags.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I remember the test. That was fun.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
thank
will-
you.
I will bring them. So I will bring the number one and the number two selection for that. So
And I see for toilet paper this year, you included all two-ply.
it's all
Yeah,
two-ply
very
toilet
good. Thank
paper.
you.
So,
Last year, there was a single ply on there. That wasn't going to fly.
yeah. And I know we added facial tissue this year as well. So that's two-ply as well. So.
Anything else for Simon on these two items? Okay.
Yeah, too many papers.
The refuse bids coming our way. They're coming.
There's two, right? Just take one off. Okay, got it, sorry.
We'll pack it off the top, looks like.
Does everybody have everything?
Not quite.
Not quite.
Okay, go ahead. Thanks, Simon.
Okay, now, refuse bids, we opened refuse bids on Thursday, May 8th. Unfortunately, we only received one bid, which is what I expected, because we only have one contractor really in the area that can handle our compactors and the quantity of our waste. So I did receive, unfortunately, after you got your bid packets, there was a cost of $650 for the 2 compactors that we have at Thunder Bay and the high school here for emptying. That was an error on their part, and that cost has since gone back up to $800. So, and that matches what we're currently paying from GFL to empty that.
We are currently paying the $800?
We are currently paying $800, yeah. So there's a 50, and we went from $5 to $5.50 on our general refuse for our open containers at our elementary buildings. So there's a 50-cent increase on our dump fees per yard, and that's charged per yard. That's not per dumpster. So if there's only 2 yards in the dumpster, that's all they charge us for. So, and then our big construction containers, our 20-yard was unchanged, and I think our 40-yard container went up $100 or something, I think, so, from last year.
Yeah, no surprise that GFL is the only bidder.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those hot social media topics. Everyone's stuck using GFL.
So we're kind of, we are stuck. I say it's the location we live in, so.
Anyone else have questions about this for Simon? Okay, we'll move on to lawn care bids. And yes, AJ said this was where we took action on this at the last meeting, but then afterwards, Gordon kindly pointed out that it was, even though we had a majority of us in attendance, we did not have a majority of the elected board, so we needed to go through this process again, and now we have Simon here to answer some of the questions that we had last time too.
Yeah, I apologize for not making the last meeting, so.
That's all right. You're allowed. Okay. All right. I think everyone has them.
I guess I'll jump right in. Questions from the last meeting. I'm aware of a few, but
Yeah, go ahead. If you just want to start speaking on those, that'd be great if you have them.
you know, the one was, slight increase in cost. It's less than 10% overall compared to the last, 3-year contract. So 3 years, an increase of 10%. I don't think that's bad for 3 years. One thing to note in that is costs can fluctuate within this contract. The cutting company is allowed 4 cuts per month depending on, weather conditions. If we get a lot of rain, they may have to cut 4 times a month. They're allowed per the contract. Same thing goes with, leaf cleanup. This year especially, storm damage cleanup. We're going to have some extra cost in that, storm damage cleanup. That's where they're charging us an hourly rate for that. So that kind of adds to some of the fluctuation and potential increase in cost over the years. So, and then I know back to, I think it was mentioned on reducing the, going from a 3-year contract to I think that kind of opens us up to potential, a 10% rate increase every year, every 2 years. instead of every 3 years. So that's,
Can you speak to, I know one of the questions that we had was, if you look back at the lawn care annual cost, the significant increase was from 2021 to 2022. Do you know what kind of happened there? Why it went from 18,500 to 28,700?
why we went from 18,000 to 28,000?
Do we know?
Of course, that was before my time, before my time when I started here. So that was pre, I'm familiar with the last contract. I guess I'm not familiar with that contract.
So what happened at that time was we contracted with Sunrise Mission. They had a work core program that they were sponsoring at that time. So that contract was very low expense-wise to us. They were not able to fulfill that. They had people, and it just, I think, was more expensive than they had anticipated. So we made a shift around that time to then go with a full-fledged landscaping company. And I think also at that time, isn't that the year that we had a contractor back out because of the management of the construction sites, and there was roofing material and nails and everything that was damaging their equipment, and so they stepped out of their contract because of that. And then we, of course, switched construction managers.
Also, the 22-24, why did we split between two different?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
22 to 24 vendor, we had two different vendors. It was kind of split there. It looks like Sanborn and Sunset had a different than. Do you know why
that was based on price. We awarded it to do two different contractors.
Gotcha.
Based on their their rate and their hours that they were going to take to cut. So yeah, when I think it was Sunrise Mission dropped out, we picked up. We had to ask our current vendors if they wanted to take on the contract at the price they bid. So there is some slight increase from that. So
Does anyone else have questions for Simon on this? We do have a quick special meeting after this to take action since we're getting into lawn care season. So
How long does the grass look out there, Monica?
The what?
How tall is the grass out the window? That's what I was
it was
looking at,
cut last Monday. I saw them out there. Actually, who was?
we cut our own here.
Yeah.
I saw it Monday. I'm like, well, someone's cutting it.
Yeah, we do cut our own at Thunder Bay and the high school, along with the stadium. We do our own mowing. So
He was doing a good job.
okay, thank you. We'll keep going if no one else has anything else. To our recycled asphalt from Bond Work.
So
I don't know. Do we have papers? Oh, we do.
and this came from a conversation with AJ about what to do with all the asphalt here. Yep, it's coming around.
so make sure you got the copy. So. Everybody got it?
Yep.
Yeah, so like Dave said, this conversation came from AJ with the bond work we're doing here this summer, and it's actually currently started out back here in the custodial parking, is to reclaim and reuse some of the asphalt millings from AHS and spread them at the central office and the bus garage. So this right here is a deduct cost for Champaign and Marks, our site contractor, to pulverize an amount of the asphalt millings and then truck them to the bus garage and central office and stockpile for us. So the deduct is $5,400. To that, though, we would have to add spreading, grading, spreading, and rolling the parking lots at the bus garage and at central office. This would greatly improve, hopefully greatly improve our parking lot conditions at both buildings. So that would be, you know, I guess we're asking the board if we should pursue that or not. So, because we would have to get quotes for this for spreading, rolling, grading, etc.
So essentially, the stuff here could get repurposed, so the bus garage would be paved, essentially, not paved, but
Not
repurposing.
paved, but
And then
you know,
same with
a
the-
much better product than what.
It's, if you've been to my place, we did this when they did, I think M65 last time.
Mhm.
And if it's done correctly, it's not asphalt, but it's pretty darn close to asphalt. And it can be a really hard surface. So they did my yard and a half mile of my road, and the stuff on the road is still standing up to the traffic that goes over it, which is significant. So it's a good opportunity. I think you actually came up with the idea, Simon. I just hopped on with.
Well, it was an idea I had, and you know, I did reach out to Champaign and Marks. Actually, that they're going to give us a credit, a deduct is
Yeah, that was kinda
to
nice.
stockpile it for us.
But that stockpile was at the 2 locations, not out here?
At 2 locations, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I confirmed that with them. You know, because they're loading it in a truck. The bus garage and central office are both, you know, very close hauls. So, because that was a conversation, I didn't want it stockpiled at the stadium, and then we would have to move it again potentially. So,
yeah.
So that I thought that was a good cost savings for us. So.
Well, and that might go a long ways to rolling it out, or grading and rolling. So.
Right. Yeah, that's I say. So, and that I guess that's the, you know, if we like this idea, we'll pursue bids to get it graded and rolled once it's stockpiled at the bus garage and central office.
So what do we need to make that happen to obtain those bids? Is that something we can just say, go ahead and obtain them, and then we see what we're looking at?
Yeah, we'd
Okay.
bring them back to you, do a bid process, bring it back to you for your approval of it.
Yeah.
I think it sounds
we
great.
Try
I
to
think
get
it's
them
a
on
great
the June meeting, the June meeting, so.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
So.
Yeah.
And we may need a special meeting, I don't know, depending on timeliness. I think
timing.
we'll be fine.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Okay, you're still up next for the high school D house leak change order. Think this- We're ready when you are, Simon.
ready when I am?
Yep.
All right, so change event number 6, as presented from Clark, the number is kind of irrelevant, but it's an $18,000 not to exceed change event. It would be done on a time and material basis by Johnson & Wood, the mechanical contractor that's doing our bond work, is to replace the heating feed and return line that feeds what will be the new attendance office right here in the corner here of the high school. So what's happened is we've already sprung 2 leaks in the steel piping, and we are going to be tying into that piping with some new work. So it just makes sense that, you know, we look at replacing this piping because it's currently turned off as it has a leak in it. We've fixed 1 leak already, and if we fix the next leak, it's only a matter of time before we spring another leak. And with the construction taking place and the amount of money we're investing in the attendance office area, I would hate to see it, you know, we blow a water line on the weekend and we flood the entire.
How old are these pipes, do we think?
This stuff's actually relatively new. Some of the new, actually probably the newest piping in the building, because that was an addition from the prior bond. And from my understanding, it was a product to cut corners and, you know, cost savings at the time. I don't know if it was new and up and coming, but it has not held up well. So.
How much more is there?
I think that's it, really. I don't think there's. I don't know what else we would have added that might have that same piping. I think everything in the back is copper from that era. So that's from here. It comes up just behind us. Here it comes up, goes directly over the attendance office, and then goes into the senior lounge. So. So once again, it's a time and material thing. It's not with the not to exceed the $18,000 amount. So.
Anyone else have questions on this? Nope. Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Simon.
Well, thank you.
Up next, curriculum and instruction related. Stephanie. We have first up the elementary interactive display proposal. I think it's on this side.
We can just go off the papers. We can just go off of these if they're the slides that you have.
Yeah. It's not picking it up.
Well, we will pivot. You guys have the printout of this. So I am going to present this first, and I have some teachers joining me for the next one. So we're going to talk about interactive displays. So that is essentially a giant touchscreen tablet in the classroom. We are closing out a 2-year grant from 35J, which is how we purchased our benchmark advanced K-5 curriculum, supplies to enhance that, which were like handwriting supplies, so Grotto grips, which helps students with handwriting grips, folders, chart paper, timers, writing journals, fatter pencils to help with grip for developmentally appropriate for like K1 students. We supplemented phonics instruction and then paid for after-school professional learning. So all of that was through this grant. You can see it was a $515,000 2-year grant. So the way to close that out is all of the money that is left over we're going to put into the interactive displays. So starting with kindergarten and moving up through until we run out of money. So the interactive display, and I've included pictures in the packet, it's engaging lessons, it's updated classroom technology. This replaces the need for projectors that would be in the room normally. The good thing about projectors is all of our rooms have them. The bad thing is they were all purchased at the same time, so they're going to all start going at the same time. So this grant came at a good time for us. So if you look at the pictures, we currently have 6 in the district. We have 1 in each elementary building, somewhere between kindergarten, 1st, or 2nd grade. The goal was to see if they're durable with little kids, durable and easily accessible. We also had teachers who are very tech savvy, and we have a teacher who is the person that's kind of quoted here that is not tech savvy at all and has absolutely loved using it. She has said that it was really easy to use, a little bit surprised by how easy it was. And the kids are incredibly engaged. One of the exciting things is nonverbal students have a new way of interacting with their peers, and that the students notice that the new features are unlike other classrooms. So they're, when they come into that room, they're very excited to see it. And the students, and this was in particular a 1st grade classroom that we got information from, the students said that they really enjoyed it when relaxing music was playing. They like being able to write at the same time. Previously, smart boards that would have been probably 15 years old now, they would only allow 1 student to write at a time. So this allows, as you can see in the picture on the previous page, there's 3 students doing math problems next to each other at the same time. And they thought the interactive games are fun. The other thing you'll notice, a lot of these photos are from the Benchmark Advanced Curriculum, the digital tools. So there's blending cards in one of the pictures. There's a student who's highlighting pieces of the text. There's some games that would help with letter sounds. And then there's a matching game that's going to match letter sounds with words that it's used in. So that is how it's been used so far, and we've had nothing but great reviews on them. So we had approximately, and I say approximately, we're kind of finishing up with some of our professional learning wages that we've had to pay out. So I'll have a total number for you that's firm next week when we bring this for a vote. But we're at approximately $172,000 remaining in that grant. I worked with Simon and Andrew to figure out the cost to mount each board is $241.32. So we added that on to the bid tabulation. It'll be done in-house. We'll do it on our own, but that's the cost of the materials. And then Andrew and I are in the process of going through the vendors that submitted the RFP. So if you look at that, you'll notice there's 1 highlighted on each side in yellow. We will have a final recommendation by Wednesday for you. Andrew and I are meeting with the vendor that is supplying Philips, which is the lowest bid at this point. We're meeting with them tomorrow. So we are wanting to make sure that the specs are the same as the new line, which is what we currently have. We want to make sure it's as durable. So the specs look good, everything looks good, but will it maintain, a 5 and a 6-year-old using it as well? So that's what we're going to find out tomorrow, and then we'll share a final recommendation with you.
So, sorry. So you said I think that we have 6 of them so far, and I did see one in a Lincoln classroom, and it was pretty incredible. And then what did it say, how many this would potentially buy? 74 to 82. How many classrooms would still be without?
When I did a rough estimate, I think we'll be able to do all K-5 general ed classrooms.
Wow.
I believe we'll start in kindergarten and work way up, the intention being engaging for the younger students.
Yep.
But I can get a final number on Monday, but my hope is that we would be able to get all K-5 rooms in the district. If we're not able to, then we can look at other funding sources.
So Steph, this is obviously a great opportunity, and I can see why kids definitely learn from it. I guess my only hesitation, even in the slightest bit, would be for the younger grades, because there is fairly convincing evidence that points to rapid eye movement, developmental with screen time, and there's a lot of data coming out about that. So I'm not against this in the least, but I was wondering if that's something that you could speak to, especially in the younger grades, kindergarten?
Yeah, so this would be really replacing the need for projectors that they're already using at this time. So it does make it a little bit more engaging with them. So instead of just sitting and staring at something happening in front of them, they're actually manipulating it and using it. If it's a blending word card, it's going to be something where they're going to have the physical piece of it potentially at their tables, but then students can be up at the board doing it as well for all the students to see. So if you think about like the Anita Archer method of teaching, I do, we do, you do. This would be the I do, the teacher showing them how to do it. Then we can do it together where a student can come up and do it, and then you're doing it on your own. And that would not be on a screen necessarily. So I think it is important to maintain, like a safe amounts of screen time, making sure that what's happening on this board is intentional and not just throwing up a movie, and that's not what's happening.
Well, I certainly understand that. And intentionality is not necessarily the point when you look at the science behind it. It's the fact that it's the way that the brain processes the movement on a screen. So it's the fact that the eyeballs in a developing brain are looking at a screen. It doesn't matter if it's an educational thing or a movie. That's kind of a moot point. And as the child develops and gets older, they can tolerate that more. And so, I know we've talked about this a little bit previously. And please understand, I'm not against this. I think it's an awesome opportunity. I just want to make sure we're not doing harm, especially at those younger grades. And then along with that, how much time would they be utilizing this, especially at those younger grades, per day? To match, CDC recommendations for screen time usage at that age level.
So that's tricky because we can't control how much time they're on the screen at home.
No, but we can control what they do in the school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, as far as how much in a day, to think about a kindergartner or first grader just sitting in a classroom at a screen, that they're not doing that. They have to have centers as well. Typically a lesson, any more than 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, you've lost their engagement. So that would be moving, good instructional practices would have them moving from activity to activity. So I can't see this kind of an activity being more than 15 minutes at a time, then they'd move on to another activity that would be something different. At that age, to have them sit at a carpet that long together, you're not going to get that much time.
No, but they'll stare at their cell phone for 6 hours at that age, playing their tablet.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not against this. Please take that. There is a concern there that I think needs to be addressed, especially at the younger age.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so next week we would have the recommendation to purchase, I put 74 or 82. So once we have that final number by Monday, then we can divide out exactly which direction of the two that we go to. So I will have that prior to Monday for you to look at, but that's the recommendation we would make at that time. Any other questions? Quick question. The teachers that do have this already, have they noticed since, say, the year prior without this, have they noticed a big improvement with the kids and being able to make more jumps and improvement in their scores with this tool? So we only put them in K1 and 2. So for that's tough to compare because they're not taking NWEA or standardized testing at that point. That grade level's doing Acadience in K1, so we're looking at phonics instruction, very specific reading skills. I can tell you the gains that we've been making overall are great. Is that because of this tool or because of the new curriculum or the supplemental curriculum? I can't say for sure, but it is really engaging where, like in the one picture, the little kiddo is actually utilizing the highlighting piece of it. Yeah. That couldn't happen without this tool in a whole group setting like that, because a projector, they're not going to be obviously writing on a projected image, but with the interactive screen, they can manipulate that a little bit differently. So, you know, what I have heard is that it's a lot more engaging. The students are focused on the lesson more because it's more interactive for them. But as far as like specific gains, we've done so much work in the last 2 years, it's hard to say what the actual cause was. Gotcha. Thank you. Any other questions on that?
I apologize. I'm probably going to ask you to repeat yourself. Every time I think chemo brain is over, it bites me. It surprises me. The significance of the yellow, does that apply to the pricing for those 61 to 80 units that's listed there, or are you considering them for the other units as well? I didn't catch it.
So they the pricing that is listed on this is the pricing that they offered. So for an example, the one on the front side with the new line model, they only gave the one price. So that would be for any amount that we purchased, that would be the price whether we bought one of them or if we bought 90 of them. The other ones, some broke it down, but for the most part, it really depended on what they submitted in their RFP is what we put on this tabulation for you. Now, was your other question of why there were two different ones?
Just what the significance of the
Yep.
yellow highlighting was, yeah.
So the yellow highlight for the new line model is the updated model of what we currently have. We know it's working, we know it's durable. That was, according to the specs, when we compared them, it was very similar to the Philips model on the back, which is actually the lowest bid. Well, the lowest bid that met our criteria, I should say. You'll see one that it doesn't play well with Google, and that's what we depend on in a lot of our classrooms. So the Philips model, we're meeting with representatives tomorrow to get a virtual meeting to see how durable they actually are. If it is indeed what they say it is, then we would recommend to go that path, just because it's the lowest bid. But we have a lot of questions before we're willing to make that recommendation.
Thank you so much.
What's the life expectancy of these screens?
These all have, not all, the two that we're looking at have a 5-year warranty at this point. And that would have to be part of the strategic plan of, we expect them to last longer than 5 years, but with technology and the way that it's moving so quickly, we're going to have to come up with a long-range plan of how to continue updating. But these have a 5-year warranty at this point.
Anything else? Okay, we will move on to the proposed elementary math curriculum presentation.
So I'm going to ask my two teachers to come up, and I'll have them introduce themselves before we get started.
I'm Stephanie Shafto. I teach 5th grade at Besser Elementary.
Good evening. I'm Danielle Dasher, and I teach 3rd grade at Ella White.
So we've had a lot of moving parts in the curriculum office lately. We are proposing a new elementary math curriculum, K-5. So we just want to kind of walk through the selection process, how we've gotten to where we are, who has been part of making that decision, and then what our recommendation will be for you. So we did the request for proposal right before spring break to solicit bids from curriculum companies, and in that we included some areas that they needed to, minimum requirements that they needed to meet. So we wanted to make sure that it met Michigan K-5 standards for mathematics. We wanted foundational mathematics skills for each grade level. Grade level mathematical processes and number sense. Explicit instruction modeling the CRA process, which means you start in the concrete with like manipulatives, representational, which would be your paper pencil, and then abstract, moving into those higher order thinking skills. We wanted the instruction to be rigorous and balanced and engaging students to create critical thinking and problem-solving skills,
And then also to be able to differentiate instruction for any special populations, whether that be a student with disabilities, English language learner, intervention needs, and all of those things.
So we have our committee review, but I like to look at it as a community review, actually. As you know, education is changing. We have diverse students and populations coming in. And we want to make sure that we are covering every aspect of the kids that we are educating. So we made sure that when we had this community review, that we had every aspect that we could think of. We had diversity within intervention coach to special education coach. We also looked at, we made sure we had every grade level from K through 5 from various different schools. We had principals there. We had instructional coaches. We had board member there. We had parents that came and looked at this. We even invited the 6th through 12th instructional coach because, you know, they go beyond K through 5. We're looking at the whole aspect of where they're going. So we made sure that when we looked at this, we had a diverse view and we're looking at every aspect of every kid that's coming into our community so we can make sure we have the best curriculum for them.
So to go through the process, it started out with myself, Becky Meyer, and Alicia Gembo, who is one of our instructional coaches and an assistant principal. We opened the bids together and then went through all of the, we had a lot. And so, you know, a lot of places will send things, but it might not meet our minimum requirements. For an example, it might be a digital-only program, or it might be more of an intervention program than an all-encompassing curriculum. So the three of us went through and narrowed it down on a ranking system of either they met the minimum standard or they did not. Some of those things that we thought about was the standards alignment, the elementary content and emphasis. It is sometimes difficult to pick like a K-12 program because you're either really strong at the elementary level or really strong at the secondary level. It's not often that it would be really strong at Algebra 2 and basic number sense for K and 1. That would be nice, but not always realistic. And then we wanted to look at things like the pacing and instructional design, what are the assessment components, and just kind of make sure that it was going to meet the needs that we felt that we had to have. And so with that, we had 9 of them that met our basic needs. So we brought in our larger committee, which, as Danielle said, was, this wasn't quite the parent board member, that piece of it yet, but it was a representative from every grade level and every elementary building and every group as far as admin, instructional coach, special populations. We have a teacher who is a Title I teacher that has over 30 years of special education experience that was part of it. And then we went through and the group each individually looked through, just spent the day looking at a lot of curriculum and created a strengths and weaknesses document. This slide deck is actually in your APS inbox, and so you'll see there's a lot of live links. So if you want to go through over the next week and look at the strengths, weaknesses documents or the ed reports, that's all in that linked for you. And so we looked at that as well as the ed reports, which is a outside organization that will rank different types of curriculum and show you where you're meeting criteria, where you're not meeting it, and it goes over all different aspects of that. And so we narrowed it down to, from that we've narrowed it down to 4.
So after we looked at all those strengths and weaknesses, we did narrow that down to SAVIS, HMH, Eureka, and Math Expressions, which is what we're using right now. We did have quite a few really in-depth considerations on that, and on that third day we really did a deep dive into each of those 4 curriculum. We were looking at the pacing over the course of the school year, how much direct instruction was happening in each of those curricula, the guided practice opportunities, independent practice opportunities, how students would be differentiated, or how learning would be differentiated for student groups rather, how we would accommodate for special populations within those groups, the professional development available to teachers, how usable the curriculum was if you're a new teacher, if you're just starting out, how editable the material is if that's needed, and how we can collect and refine data that we are able to glean out of all of that.
So then after that, we narrowed it down to 2, and it was pretty obvious which ones stuck out. And it was SAVIS and Holton, Mifflin, Harcourt, which we're going to just call HMH. It's a little bit easier. And as you can tell just from the sticky notes there, you can see like we really like went depth. We sat down, we took the 2 curriculums, we went grade level by grade level, and we talked about it, we discussed it, and then we went ahead and we looked at, during the live presentations when they came in, we had the 2 come in, we had HMH come in the morning, and then Savas came in after. And we sat down with the 2 vendors and we really looked at it, and then we discussed, and then we even got out more the resources after they had left, and we made the strengths and the weaknesses, and we came to our conclusion.
I won't ask for a drum roll, but it is HMH into math is what we decided would best meet our needs. There is a link to what they are calling a digital room, so you can dive into that as much or as little as you want, but it has all the resources. It has a ton of information there for your review. And so we are going to be asking on May 19th the recommendation to adopt this. I won't read that recommendation to you, but it is all listed there, and we will talk a little bit more about what that implementation looks like. But first, we wanted to share what the teachers love about this specifically.
So what you really looked at, and I'm a very much standards type girl. I like to know where I'm going, where my students are supposed to go, how to get there, create a pathway. So what really stood out, we loved that they had the I can statements with the math progressions, but not only for that, because we've been looking at teacher clarity this year a lot. It like really lent to teacher clarity, it helped guide the teachers to where they need to go. So, and it's all right there from beginning to end. It has exit tickets and everything. Also, as we know, we need to push our kids, like we're stagnant a little bit right now. It has a strong number sense in the lower grade levels, and that's like that's the foundation. Like if they don't have strong number sense, when they come to my 3rd grade class, they struggle. So it had that. It also was engaging because, you have to have engagement. If it's boring, kids are not going to be paying attention. You do drive the curriculum, but it also helps to have the engaging materials before them. Which is also really good is that the workbooks, you can tear out the pages and stuff, but they don't just end at one workbook. You have extra materials, so if you need to add some extra practice and stuff, you can go ahead and do that. So it just had lots of stuff. There's also a program called Waggle. It's an online program, and NWA it actually links with that, which is our data that we use, points in order to figure out how to drive our instruction. And that was like fantastic. Like that's the best thing. If you have one thing on one platform and not go to 5 different ones, that's like such time saving for you. And it's also great for your students so you can drive that the scores up. There's also built-in features that you can assign assignments to students, or you can do stuff with them with Waggle together as a class. So there's a lot of variety and stuff, and it was just a great way to drive instruction, education. You have rigor, and you're able to get assess and know where to go in order to improve your scores and improve whether the student is lacking.
I want to add a couple of things about Waggle just because I know that's, you're going to have questions, especially with screen time. So Waggle is similar to Imagine Math, except what I took from it, from what the teacher said, everything that's wrong with Imagine Math, Waggle has an answer for. So for an example, the students have a 90 seconds per 24-hour period max that they can change the clothes on their avatar, because that is a really great time waster for some kids. And teachers in the audience will laugh because they know the struggle is real. It also had a gaming option of it, but they can earn stars, and they're capped at how many stars. So they can't, they can't play games for more than 20 minutes a week total. Mm-hmm. That's in and out of the room. But then their recommendation was 20 minutes at a time, 3 times a week. So this would be something that they would be on during small group instruction, that it would be connected to what their actual assessment data is showing that they're lacking in. And there's what I really liked, that it allows the students to go 2 grade levels above what they currently what we currently have. So for an example, 5th grade students, if they're advanced, they could go up to 7th grade material, and that could be differentiated for them. The other thing I really liked is if the teacher noticed that they were really struggling in an area, they can just put them on the program and let them do it, but they can also say, well, I know that they're really struggling in this specifically. This is what MSTEP is showing or NWEA is showing. Then they can have lessons catered to that. If it's above their frustration level, the program will set it down for a little bit, let them do some things that make them feel success, or back up a little bit if they haven't quite gotten the basic skills to get there, and then move forward. I think, is that everything with WAGO?
So for me, it's really important that we have data analysis and evidence-based practices that we're using in a classroom. And one thing that I particularly really love about HMH is that it does automatically sync to students' NWEA results for teachers. So we can use that information to create specific pathways for our students to make sure that we can close the gaps that we're seeing on NWEA. Lesson plans are very easy to follow, so if you're a brand new teacher, this is your first year, or if you're a substitute teacher that day, the lesson is very clear. It doesn't take a whole lot of extra stuff for you as a teacher to be able to present the material, but it does have a really high level of rigor for our students. Lessons follow the same format from the time they're in kindergarten to the time they're in 5th grade. So there's going to be something very akin to a number talk at the beginning, and then there'll be something like an I do, we do, you do, where we'll present the information. Students will have time for guided practice, and then they'll be able to practice independently. There's a wonderful part that's a strong parent component with videos to support the classroom instruction. This means that if your student is learning decimal long division this week, I can send a video to parents to remind them how to do decimal long division. A lot of them, it's been a long time since they've been in 5th grade. They might not remember this. Teachers Corner does have resources for teachers to be able to watch videos or access articles. It's all asynchronous. You don't have to sign up for anything ahead of time. You just think, oh my gosh, I don't remember how to do this. I'm not sure how to best use this manipulative. I can just go in there, watch a 3-minute video, and know how to do it. Everything that is manipulatives is available both digitally and physically. There are lots of very prescriptive resources for small groups, so I can look at a student's assignment and say, okay, they got numbers 3, 5, and 7 wrong. That means I need to reteach the stuff for this small group that was in 4th grade, Unit 3, Lesson 2. And I can take a look and see exactly what needs to be done. All materials are also available digitally or in print, which is going to be helpful if I need to send stuff home. If a kid is going to be on vacation, if they're absent for 2 weeks, I can send stuff home to them digitally.
So implementation, it's the bid is for 5 years total. So year 1 is we've allowed up to 40 teachers to begin. It would be by choice, but our hope is that we would have someone from upper and lower elementary from each building. And these would be our early implementers. They would have virtual and possible in-person professional learning in August. We're going to kind of see where our needs are. The goal is to, like I said, have at least 2, but we've actually had, I believe, already 32 teachers who have expressed an interest, if this should pass, that they would like to be part of that. And then we have 2 of our elementary instructional coaches will receive training throughout the first school year at least, which is called Coachly. So we would have an upper level and a lower level instructional coach that would have a person from HMH that would support them in monthly meetings. So if we're having struggles, if we have questions, they would be kind of our go-to people. And then in year 2, this would be all K-5 math teachers will be expected to use it during the 26-27 school year. All teachers and instructional coaches would have the same virtual training option. And then professional development days would be, they would have instructional coach support, team time, instructional coaching cycles, and then our year 1 implementers would also be available to support staff with implementation. So the final slide that, like I said, is in your inbox, but on here, it has the 4 links to the actual bids. They broke it down for us so we could kind of pick and choose what we wanted to do and a breakdown of what it entailed. You can see that the grand total over 5 years is listed at the bottom. And I would open up to any questions that you have. You're up, Eric.
Sure. No, it sounds great. A couple key points. You said it kind of collaborates with NWEA, and then you said as a teacher you can kind of extrapolate out where they're having difficulties, correct?
You can do that, or you can let the system just do its own thing. You have both options.
Is there a way, because we're looking at outcomes, obviously that's what we're talking about here, and we're using standardized testing, which, from what I hear most teachers, that isn't a good measure of what a student truly does. I mean, obviously it's what we have to work with. It's a usable tool. But how does that student do on a day-to-day? Can we extrapolate out the data from this program for the district at any point and say, hey, this student's actually doing really good in this area. Maybe they're testing bad on the standardized testing. And then that would give us a better measure as far as goals, what we need to do to help the student. And then compare them, because we have to do both. But is that a tool that's built into this program that we can use?
So it has benchmark assessment data, different from benchmark advance, that's a little confusing because that's our ELA curriculum, has the same ability. So at a district lens, at a building lens, at a classroom lens, you can look at their test scores and see exactly, like I can pinpoint right down to which standard we're lacking in at an entire grade level, in a classroom. This math program has the same ability. So we can look at by standard, where is a student lacking? That would help with small group instruction. That helps, NWEA, I had a conversation with a friend of mine. Their student just did really, really poorly, and they were pretty upset about it, but they didn't sleep the night before. They were overtired. Sure. So, one little snapshot could make or break an entire, same thing with SAT or PSAT. I mean, you don't know what headspace that student is in at that time. So while that is something that we are graded on and measured by, this would be able to give us unit assessments. The nice thing about this will be all kindergarten through 5th grade unit assessments across the district will be the same. So all kindergartners are taking the same thing at the same approximate time according to the pacing guides. 1st grade taking the same assessments. But then the progressions that they spoke of will say, like, if you have this standard, maybe it's adding and subtracting with regrouping, what does that student need to know before they're ready to do that? So the lesson plan actually breaks that down, what standard it is, what grade level it was taught in. That's something that we can also look at digitally through assessment. So there's like a readiness portion of it, but then we can also report out those test scores.
Yeah, so considering, it passes, right? Let's just say that happens. At what point will we be able to look at the data? I know with the English, we actually saw data fairly quickly, and there was actually pretty marked improvement, and we can track that. I'm hoping we see the same thing here, but at what time increments can we expect measurable data coming back in?
So kind of switching over to the benchmark advance, this year, because it's a brand new year for most of our teachers implementing it, we asked them to start using those online tools, teaching the kids how to use it, teaching the teachers how to use it. So then we're figuring out which assessments are developmentally appropriate. So for an example, benchmark advance was created in New York, where you don't go to school until you're 6. Well, we have students who might be 4 that are starting. So that's 2/3 of their life. So is it really a good measure? So we've kind of taken this year to look and see what assessments are giving us good information and useful information. We don't want to assess students just to assess them. So for that program, we plan on sharing that out with you next year, because everyone will have had at least 1, if not 2 years of using that. As far as math, I would see it similar. I don't want to give the teachers, here you are, 3 weeks in, now share this with the board. Give them a year of implementation. So our piloting teachers would have, potentially we could start looking at that towards the end of next year of a smaller group, knowing that that's a small group. But as far as district-wide, I would say at the start of year 2 full implementation. Does that make sense? Year 2 full implementation for everybody, so that everyone has at least 1 year to get a level of comfort with it. The other nice part about the assessments in HMH is that it is set up very similar to standardized assessments. So it goes through the tools similar to M-STEP. It's very difficult for a 3rd grade student to take M-STEP because they've never done it before, they've never seen it before. So now not only are you taking this test, but you're also learning how to take the test for the first time. So is that really a valid point? Are they, do they know what they're doing? Not the mathematically, but do they know how to utilize the platform? So this also supports that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm wondering, I'm assuming it says that the materials are both in print and digital, and I'm assuming that not all of their work in this program is going to be on a computer. So how does the data that comes from what they do in print get into the system for it to perform its operations and track that data?
So you wouldn't be assessing them on practice. We would only be assessing them on formative and summative assessments. So you would be seeing summative assessments, which would be digitally taken. As far as like their ticket out the door that they talked about, that wouldn't be something that would be reported out. That's just for the teacher to guide instruction for reteaching. And then if there's both systems in our ELA and math, if there's like a kindergarten or first grade assessment that the teacher wants to give paper pencil, there's the override feature where we could input that information so that it would be shared out at the central office level and then shared with you.
Can you remind us, I know when we did this for the secondary for Savas, it was like that old math curriculum we had used for way too long. Do you know how long we've been using our current math curriculum?
So I can't give you a number of years, but I can tell you that this is year 10 in the district for me, maybe year 11, and it has not been replaced since I've been in the district. It has been updated as far as like just a different edition because they stopped creating the student workbooks. I believe it's 2018, I think is the copyright that we're using right now. And so they updated the standards, and so student workbooks have been updated, but as far as the curriculum itself, it is old, at least 10 years old.
Stephanie, so when an intervention teacher comes in, is there some simple way that if you've taught a lesson and you know that this Title I student just didn't get it, is there materials there that you can just hand that?
Thanks for the lead-in. Sarah was part of the committee. So there was I'll let you explain the small group.
The flip chart. Sorry.
Yeah, there are some wonderful small group things. There is a tabletop flip chart that everybody just found this to be a wonderful, wonderful resource. That's something that can be used in small groups, or it can be used with special education students or title students or whatever needs to be done. There's also a great separate tie-in text that goes along with it that can show a special education teacher exactly, okay, they're on this unit, this lesson in the general education class. Here are my intervention materials that I can use for my students as well to reinforce that.
And the flip chart had a really cool component that it could be written on with a dry erase board or marker, but it's basically a chart, like a little easel on the table. The student sees their side, the teacher side, it has all the intervention ideas, and so they can go through with the lesson. So you could have it be a trained teacher, an interventionist who wasn't part of that lesson, or potentially, a paraprofessional if they're working with a group in your classroom. A lot of our kindergarten classrooms have an aide most of the day. They could, you could share all of that information very easily and quickly. And Sarah, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Because Sarah was part of the 2 live presentations.
I was just real impressed at how you can take it 2 grades up or 2 grades down. That if we have 5th grade, like you said, 5th grade students that can move, that need to move, and there's a lot of differentiation for either our kids who need more, okay, I've got that, I need to move on, and also for those students who just need the extra support. I think it's a really great. It really is a great program, and I just am shocked that our current math is over 10 years old. That, being a former teacher, that just really shocked me. But I think it's a great program, and I would go with what the teachers. They're the experts. They're the ones who are going to teach it. What they feel is going to improve our student outcomes and improve our students, and and also the thing about the lesson plans being very rigorous, but also being very user-friendly with substitutes or, substitutes coming in or things like that. So it's a very good program.
Any other questions?
Great. Thank you, teachers, for coming, too. Thank you. Okay. Quickly going over the 2025 Retirees Recognition and Appreciation Resolution.
And so this is just an annual recognition of our retirees. Just putting multiple eyes on this document. You'll see the resolution is standard, but on the back are our staff that are retiring. So It's been looked over, but if you happen to catch anything that needs to be updated, let us know. But then the board would adopt this resolution at the regular meeting next week.
I just say one of the teachers, just to note, their name is not in bold, the fourth one down on the left column. All the others are, so that just a easy fix, but we will honor these staff members, read the resolution on Monday. Anyone have anything on this? No? Okay, we will move on to information and questions from board members. We slid in here after talking with Eric about the Fairview policy, putting it back under board discussion just to continue discussing versus reading, and so it's just under discussion item, so whatever conversations people would like to have regarding that.
Yeah, sure, I'll chime in. Not afraid to talk out, I guess. I wasn't here last week, so our last meeting, so I'll chime in. I can certainly understand points of view on both sides of this. Privacy aspects, I'm a father. Do I want an individual that identifies as the opposite sex in the locker room or bathroom with her? Absolutely no, I do not. Do I think that as the board it's our responsibility to protect those that differ from us? Absolutely I do. The challenge is, where does that meet? And I think that it's really a moving target at this point because there's so much debate, discussion, lawsuits going on at the national level, even above the state level. There's lawsuits that are pending right now related to this, even as far as school funding. And I know there were some concerns with community members that the board's responsibility is to protect the funding for the students. And that's also a consideration that needs to be taken into this, is there is threats against funding if we don't comply with certain things, which is why there's lawsuits that are going on. Again, it's a moving target. Throughout this week, I was kind of thinking, how could you cross that threshold? And so I was looking, is there ways to protect privacy within the bathrooms and policy and still protect? There are ways to do it. It is cumbersome, but there are policies that can be designed to do so that actually do both. And it closes some of the gap between the two. The problem is, I think even if we were to push that at this point, we're probably going to be having this conversation again in a couple months. And so, although I think this is a reasonable thing to discuss, and having different viewpoints is okay. We don't have to agree, but I think we still need to get along, okay? But I think at this point, my recommendation would simply be to table this for the time being, pending further clarification at the federal level through some of these lawsuits. Once that happens, then we will have a direction in which we could go. I do have something written out here which I think is a measure that would go between the two, and I can certainly share that. Do I think it's wise to approach it right now? I don't know that it is. And so, again, I am not opposed to having this conversation further. I just think the timing right now is not the time.
Yeah, I agree with Eric. I think that just discussing and keep discussing this issue, we're not looking at what we really should be looking at. We have a procedure right now in place. The students, the administration seems to, it's working, and I agree with you. Let's let this play out because there's so many more uncertainties that are coming up. And right now we have a solution. We have not a policy, we just have a procedure that the students in this building and the administration are fine with. Let's move on and wait to see what comes and happens down the road. But I don't want to waste any more of our time on this until we have some concrete evidence of what's going to happen.
Well, and we're going into summer at this point, so we have a little bit of reprieve.
Yeah.
I certainly think to ensure that nobody's rights are being tread upon and that this discussion gets dropped, I think bringing it back up prior to the start of the school year is not unreasonable if there's changes in the landscape. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, no, I actually would agree too, because we were actually able to see the legal from Thrun, which did not mention anything about Title IX. So I'd like, to see what happens. And I don't know if that was on purpose, where they weren't really sure to go with that or not. So that's what I kind of took from it, since it was kind of such a short paragraph. So yeah, I would be fine waiting on this to see what happens. Did we get a hold of Dave Coleman at all?
So we received an email from them this morning or afternoon, sometime today, so they did get back to us.
Yeah, I think if we do hold on it then, and then proceed, and did he give numbers at all, or did
So
you
it's just a contract of service, and yes, his going rate is $450, but it would be what, $275, I think, in our circumstance. I read through it quickly on my phone. I didn't see a retainer cost. Did you have a chance? So he didn't provide us a retainer cost. I'll double check to make sure, and I'll share it too. But yeah, $450 was the rate, but for us, he would do $275, and then it talks about the different services, litigation versus general counsel and things like that. So,
Can we get a copy of it too?
yeah, it came in again. Yeah. I think I was driving here or something.
Yeah,
So.
well, just with the superintendent update would be good.
Okay.
That was going to be my question as well, and I would imagine that since we have some numbers to really talk about, the motions that people were making before, maybe would be more appropriate in our next meeting this month, to really look at that, as long as we can get some information to look at ahead of time.
Yeah. And so I have Troon lined up to come on June 23rd to, talk about what they offer. I did talk to Setseg in the parking lot out here today, so I have some information there. Basically, they're willing to have a conversation, but they have concerns about coming at the same time Troon is here because of the arrangements and conflict of interest and attorney-client privileges and things like that. So again, I look for a little bit of direction of, when we're talking about these firms, what is it exactly the board is interested in knowing? Because I don't want to become the middle person that misinterprets the message either way. But I do have a proposed contract from Coleman. Troon is ready to come meet with us, and then Setseg will be available as well. I also talked to Greg Mayer at Giamarco, so he's ready to have whatever conversations.
Anybody correct me if I misspeak or I'm not. I'm not capturing the board's thought on this, but what I've been hearing is that I think we're interested in the constitutional law expertise of Coleman, not to have them replace Troon entirely, because they have been pretty clear. I think they don't do everything that Troon does, but I think in these particular areas, it seems to me the board is interested in their expertise on those questions.
Okay. Does anyone know, I've thrown that constitutional lawyer term around, and nobody really understands exactly what that is. They're all, part of their oath is to uphold the Constitution.
So it would have to do with anything involving civil rights, or anything that's, things that are before the Supreme Court of that nature, which I think bears quite in a very germane fashion on some of our discussions.
Okay.
Did you get a hold of I can't remember the one I brought up. Was it Mullins, Dorado?
Mullins, Horton, and I can't pronounce the first name.
Giamarco?
Yeah.
Yeah, Giamarco.
Yeah, so Giamarco, what is it?
Mullins and Horton.
So that is our attorney, Greg Mayer, who has come and presented. That's his firm. So I spoke to him, spoke to Setseg first, because Setseg is who we contract, I don't know if that's the right word with, but when we are being litigated against or have due process claims, we utilize SETSEG, and then they contract with Gianmarco, and then Ken Chappie is our other attorney who's currently representing us. I can't recall the name of his firm. Do you know off the top of your head? So SETSEG has, you know, a list of firms they use. We primarily use their first choice, second choice. And again, we started with Gianmarco, Greg Mayer on one case, and there developed a potential conflict of interest, so they then referred that work to Ken Chappie at the other firm, and then you'd kind of work your way down. But yeah, speaking with Greg Mayer, you know, he said he could provide general counsel on some issues, but if he were going to advise us on, you know, school finance in areas that he's not qualified to do, he used some pretty strong language of no, he wouldn't do that. It would be potentially not malpractice, but something along those lines.
Which one was that?
Greg Mayer through Gianmarco. So those two firms don't provide general counsel the way Troon does. Okay. They're primarily litigation and complaints against the district.
Right?
And we cannot use, if we had them as our general, we could not use them through SETSEG then, correct? Is that for sure?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'd hate to lose someone like them if we can get just the basics done through Troon.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, Troon, and there's about 3 other firms probably that really have the resources that Troon has in the state of Michigan. But the idea is, you know, they provide us general counsel on every aspect of the school district. There's some very specialized areas where they might refer us somewhere else. But then if we get a complaint of any kind, you know, that's when SETSEG kicks in.
Mm-hmm. Do you know our I know you just got all this stuff, but do you know our deductible?
And you happen to know off the top of your head? Yeah.
Depends on what?
Okay. Can we get that too? We can look through it.
Well, she's available to speak if the board wants to. You know, she's ready to have a phone conference with up to 2 board members if we want to do that route. Again, forwarding those kind of documents back and forth, there's a lot that could be misinterpreted, misunderstood, misrepresented, whatever it is. I'd rather have you hear it directly from them, and then they can answer those questions.
Okay. So are potentially looking at having them come to a meeting other than our workshop in June because Troon will be here?
Yeah. First, Janet, from SETSEG is not available on the 23rd, okay. And then also she expressed concerns with, you know, having the attorneys and them in the same room at the same time. Okay. She felt the better avenue was just have a conference call with 2 board members and, you know, just pose those questions and then she can go through that. But Troon is scheduled to come talk to the board as a whole on the 23rd. And then David Coleman, you know, just got the document. So again, if we want to, I don't know. I guess we wouldn't be looking to, I guess I'm confused again as to what exactly we are doing. So the contract that Coleman has presented, and again, I read through it very quickly today, but he said it's what he's used in Allendale and Onaway. Both those districts no longer work with Coleman. Onaway, I think, was going to use it for one particular area and do a wholesale move away from Troon. They never made that wholesale move away from Troon. Allendale did make a wholesale move away from Troon, and then, you know, realized Coleman could not provide general counsel for all of what they needed, so they've moved back. They do, you know, and I talked to the superintendent. He said he would call Coleman on, some issues and just keep that open as an option. What that looks like from a board directive, from a contractual standpoint, from, whatever, I'm not exactly sure. If we're just signing up, having someone do hourly work, or, again, I didn't see a retainer clause in there. It might be in there. So I guess my question is it, what are we exploring? Moving away from Troon and replacing it with Coleman? I would tell you that's not going to work based on the two examples that even he cited. If we're looking at moving away from Troon and going with another firm, then I guess I'd need some guidance there so that we could start lining people up to come and meet with the board.
If I might chime in, again, members of the board, correct me if I am misspeaking or not representing the general consensus of what I have heard the board say. My understanding is that we're interested in perhaps asking Troon to look at specific policies or specific questions, asking for their counsel on those issues, but not replacing Troon entirely. Although, I guess I'm open to considering other options, but I don't believe that there's any question about Coleman offering the entire slate of services that Troon does offer. So again, if anybody disagrees with that statement or I've not understood the board correctly, please correct me. But I believe that is the sentiment.
Okay. Now, Troon had a very lawyerly response when I told him what we were exploring. And now I have to remember how they put that. But so when this policy was posed to me, I went to them to say, do you advise doing this? And their advice was no. They will provide no, and here's what you can expect to happen. Yes, and here's what you can expect to happen. They will provide both of those legal guidances. So they wanted to make it very clear. They're not making those decisions. The board is making these decisions. So again, when you ask me, are they saying, advising us to put that in? That's what they're saying. They don't advise it. You could then come back and say, well, we're going to, and what next? And then they would provide you the legal advice, counsel on those options. They can give you a whole variety of options on that. But again, it was presented to me, would our policy company support this, and would the attorneys? And the answer is no. You then do have that right to say, well, we want to explore this, and what is their, their guidance on that.
And this is probably a question more for them, is, from an attorney standpoint, they can say yes or they can say no, but when you pay an attorney, you also want them to be able to give you different options that maybe are more in line with what you want, that still protect the law. Mm-hmm. Instead of just yes or no. And so when we're asking a group that works for us, in essence, perhaps to give us different options, I think that's something we would like to be able to have them do for us. Not just like, no, we can't do that. Well, yeah. Then that leaves you in a place where what do we do? Do we look for alternative options? I'm not saying we should get rid of them, but I think those are questions that I would be interested in asking them when they come. So yeah,
and just so everyone knows, like, their answer was not yes, no. That's how I'm, paraphrasing it. You saw the email where she said, "Here's why you don't want to, put yourself in that harm's way, liabilities way." And again, if you wanted multiple options, that's what they're there to do. They are incredibly risk averse, so they're going to give us the option that keeps us as far out of the way of, liability and all of that. But they are our attorneys, and if we have other, want other information or that, we can certainly pose it that way.
And I think too, we need to make one clarification with the community too, is that Neola was not actual legal advice. Neola was, since this is a district-specific policy, not from them, they cannot guarantee their lawyers covering us for it. So it wasn't a legal opinion on it.
Yeah, I don't think I presented theirs as a legal opinion. They're our policy company.
We were told that there were two legal opinions.
Yeah, it actually, we were told there were two legal opinions, and why would we want a third? And I believe the community picked that up, but I believe that now we realize that was maybe not the fullest representation of the situation.
Well, I think maybe the second two was from Brad Banashak, the attorney at MASB. Maybe that would, because I had said I'd talked to him about it, so maybe
It
that
was specifically discussion about Neola.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they do have lawyers review all of their policies to make sure that those are in line, so, yeah. And their recommendation was no, this would be a violation of Elliott Larson.
Yes, from the representative, not the lawyer.
Okay.
I mean, I just like to clarify, because if we're going to go saying we have two legal opinions, we should have two legal opinions. So I think we just need to make sure we clarify that.
Anything else?
Oh, I did have a question. Do we have donations? I didn't see that on the agenda, and I'm not to this point. So they're all waiting until sometime this week to make them, and they're all going to be people with really difficult names to pronounce, so I can't practice.
Oh, I have another question too, while you're looking for those. I emailed you guys about dress code. We said we'd talk about it in May. Are we pushing that off then? Dress code and cell phones?
Well, I think we were going to meet that night. So, yeah, it wasn't on this meeting. We'd be bringing that up next month.
Okay, sounds good.
Possibly.
I think we felt this was a long enough meeting. We might be able to
I
squeeze
don't
it
know.
in the next one.
Anything else? Okay. All right, I guess nothing else under there. We do have another quick meeting after this, but you see our advanced planning below. And with that, we will adjourn. I'm going to pass out the next agenda. We can quickly go into it. But for everyone leaving, we're taking care of the lawn care bid next. And a special
There will
meeting.
be an action item.
There will be an action item, Mark. Yep, that's why we have to have a special meeting.
Is it just the lawn care? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe it's.
I didn't know if I had to make a run for it.
That's it. It's just the lawn care.
I'm thinking so.
I was going to say you're not leaving 1, 2, 3, 4.
No, they're using the bathroom. Thank you.
Is it going to be real quick?
I mean, I think it should be quick.
All right, let's do it quick.
Let's just do it quick.
Let's just do it, get done.
Should be. I mean,
Yeah, let's just.
Yeah, correct.
Come on, Stephanie,
All right.
wake up here.
It's 8:52. I'm going to call the next meeting to order and ask everyone that's staying to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, like a motion to approve the special meeting agenda as presented.
Support.
I know that was really fast. Anyone? I think Eric
Eric
Lawson.
and AJ.
Eric and AJ.
Eric and AJ.
Conversation? All in favor, show of hands. Okay, that's 6 yeses. Sarah's not here. Thank you. Do we have any citizens or delegations who would like to address the board?
Opinions, and I would just like to remind you that there's a difference between a legal opinion and a legal argument. Am I saying something funny there, AJ?
Diane.
Anyway, so often local boards request legal arguments that support something like a policy. And don't you really want a legal analysis?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ray. I live 502 Avery Street in Alpena, and I'm speaking to you as the president of the Alpena Education Teachers Association. And I just wanted to note in the planning, advanced planning, that you have under the retirement dinner that is to be determined. It has been determined we are going to be doing that at the Aplex. So, we've already signed the contract and all that. So I just wanted to make you aware that we do have a place, and it's going to be fabulous, and you should all be there. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else?
My name's Amy Fitzpatrick. I'm from Alpena, Michigan. I have kids that go here. I just wanted to say thank you to the board members that have been attending some of the senior events over the last couple of weeks. My daughter's been lucky enough and has worked very hard to be a part of these really wonderful celebrations that the school has put on. And I just want to say I'm so impressed with the board members that have been a part of that have handed out awards, and that have made a point to come and celebrate the successes of our children. And I'm so thankful for that, and thank you for coming, and thanks for having those events here in the school system.
Right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we will move on to our action item, the lawn care recommendation, the lawn care bid, and the motion to approve the lawn care bid as presented. The paper that we got in the meeting we just finished. It would be yeah, giving the contract to a cut above, correct?
Yeah. On the front page.
Yep.
Where's the dollar figure?
I don't know if there was one.
So I think it's all based on how often.
The number of times?
The number
Okay.
of times, yeah. So it's just awarding the contract to a cut above landscaping.
Okay.
Isn't there a projection, 25 through 27 on the next to last page? In that box on the right, $40,483.25.
Projected, yes.
I'm just going to go back. I don't know if our last agenda. I don't know if I can find it, if it had it in the language.
We did ask what happens if it proceeds, goes over that 40,000.
So what is the question again?
If there was more specific language other than to.
Because we're awarding a bid for amount we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, which I understand it's a flexible bid, which he's understanding, but how does that motion look if we're awarding a certain dollar figure to something we don't know what that number is?
Yeah, I guess last time I said the same thing. Motion to award the recommended lawn care bid as presented.
Because it's by the time and fee.
Sure.
Yeah,
which
it's
is
multiple
understandable.
years, yep.
And so mowing frequency up to 4 times per month.
So what would you like the wording of that?
I mean, here, so it says in his letter, I recommend awarding the contract for lawn care and yard surfaces at all specified building sites to a cut above landscaping is the.
I would offer that motion.
Second.
Okay, anything further? All in favor, show of hands, please. Okay, we have 5 yeses and AJ's no. Are we good? Correct? Okay, thank you. Okay. Any other citizens or delegations who'd like to address the board? Okay, we have our advanced planning with that modifying, make sure that we know where the retirement party is at Apex. And I know we can RSVP to summer on that one. And with that, we'll be back. Okay, yes, so next week we're having our meeting at the boardroom.
Should be back at the board.
Yeah,
this wasn't very
think we-
full, and
yeah.
it's kind of hard to hear.
It was a nice night, though, so maybe we monitor the weather and.
Do it outside?
Yes.
Okay, with that, we can adjourn. Thank you. We do it else.